Chapter 96. It rained in the middle of August, and the temperature dropped a lot. However, as long as the weather cleared up, the temperature would soar at an extremely fast rate. Therefore, many people went out to have fun while the weather was still cool. After dinner, Zhang Tan was picked up by Celestine to go to the night building. Basically, as long as they were not there to talk about business, and were just there to have fun, Celestine would drive over to pick up Zhang Tan. Otherwise, he would be bored alone. The night building was a rather sensitive place, and it would not be good to ask his comrades to go there. This time, when Celestine came over, Zhang Tan learned some things from him. According to Celestine, the big cat was named Monseigneur by Yi Hao's son. Although Yi Hao was opposed to the name, his son liked it, and so did his father-in-law. Therefore, the name was decided. Moreover, every time they called Monseigneur, the big cat responded very enthusiastically. Regarding this, Zhang Tan expressed a considerable amount of envy and jealousy. Why was there General, Prince, Li Yuanba, and now Monseigneur around him? Why did he have to be called Black Charcoal? This was really *ket up. On the way to the night building, Celestine told him about the big cat. He heard that after the Monseigneur stayed at the villa for a period of time, he was asked to go over by Master Tang VII. This was because the 19th uncle was going to visit him with his super cat the next day. The big cat was named Monseigneur because of the battle the next day. Celestine did not know the specific details. He was in the company at that time, so he only knew that the Monseigneur returned triumphantly in the end. The whole process took less than a minute. It was an overwhelming victory. Master Tang VII could not stop smiling during that time. The two gray parrots he fed no longer plucked their feathers. After spending some time with the Monseigneur, their relationship became quite good. Sometimes, Master Tang VII would let the two gray parrots out for no reason. They would just jump around the Monseigneur. The Monseigneur would not bite them and let them play around. When Master Tang VII called Yi Hao, this was what he said. "This cat is good. Stay." Yi Hao was helpless. He was surrounded by masters. There was no need for Yi Hao to do anything. Master Tang VII had already prepared some certificates. If someone asked, he could even take out a certificate of a super cat, imported from abroad. He even had a clear introduction of the cat's birth. In any case, the big cat had now found a place to stay. It was truly living under the sun, and could feel the sun without fear. It did not have to hide from people or worry about being caught. It was not in vain for it to save Yi Hao. Or perhaps, from then on, that bastard had already started to have ideas. Li Yuanba was smart to be able to find a suitable place to stay after wandering around. When he had time, Yi Hao's son would even take the big cat to see his wife. They did not have to be sneaky anymore. When he came to the night building, Zhang Tan still went to see Ajin and the others first. Ajin and the others were resting today, so Celestine took Zhang Tan to Ajin's rented apartment. There, Zhang Tan saw the lame dog again. Compared to the last time he saw it, it was much healthier. Its fur also had some luster. When it heard someone coming, it barked twice. When it saw Zhang Tan and Celestine, it wagged its tail and walked to Ajin's side to lie down. Now, Ajin and the others had also learned a lot of things that they had not come into contact with before. They knew how to live a better life here. Every place and place had its own rules of survival. As long as they grasped them, they would be able to live more smoothly. After the experience of serving dishes and watching the resident singers and bands, they would be arranged to perform in the North District in September. It was not a long time, but it was a good start. The five of them cherished it very much and rehearsed whenever they had time. Ajin named their band New Boy. Zhang Tan thought that the name was really awesome. The abbreviation was NB. Not only that, Ajin also made a team emblem, which was a pattern of a black cat. Ajin felt that they could persist until today and get through that hurdle all because of this cat. Therefore, the team emblem was unanimously approved by the 5 people in the team. After seeing Ajin and the others, they came to Celestine's private room in the night building. Celestine also invited Ajin and the other 4 to come together. This time, Zhang Tan did not sing, but watched a live concert. Today, a famous foreign band came to the East Palace of the night building. In fact, in many cases, It was possible to find real good music in this kind of night venue. Even if Zheng Tan did not know much about music, his performance skills were really amazing. Only when Celestine brought Zheng Tan over could Ajin and the others be called to listen to the performance. Every time Celestine brought Zheng Tan over, Ranchi was basically nowhere to be seen. That guy now had a desire to avoid cats. Ever since he met Zheng Tan and Monseigneur, Ranchi felt that all the cats in the world were somewhat abnormal. For this reason, Ranchi was often laughed at by Leopard and the others, saying that he was neurotic. The night venue in the East Palace would last until after midnight. The specific time was determined by the situation. Zheng Tan did not go back tonight. He lay on the sofa and slept through the night. Celestine wanted to sleep on the sofa, but was kicked down by Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan had always occupied the entire sofa by himself. The next day, after breakfast, Celestine sent Zheng Tan back to the east courtyard. Like the previous few times, Celestine did not go upstairs. If he went, the two children would roll their eyes. It was better not to go, so he drove the car to the courtyard, opened the window, and let Zheng Tan jump out. Then he drove away. When he got home, Zheng Tan found that the door was open. There were guests. Looking into the living room, he saw two strangers sitting on the sofa. One was middle-aged, the other was younger, and they were both dressed plainly. The middle-aged man was talking to the Jiao Pa. The young man sitting next to him was silent. He lowered his head and only occasionally answered the Jiao Pa's questions. When the Jiao Pa spoke to them, he had a slight accent. This was also to take care of them. Speaking in a dialect was more intimate. Jiao Ma placed the washed grapes on the coffee table. Then, she went to Jiao Yuan's room to supervise Jiao Yuan in writing English words. Many children in junior high school would attend English cram school this summer. However, with Jiao Ma and little Pomelo in the Jiao family, Jiao Yuan did not need to attend any cram school at all. He had been playing too much during the summer break. Now he was cooped up at home every day to study English. Sometimes he would have simple conversations with little Pomelo. Jiao Wei was staring at his fingernails, deep in thought. After the grapes were placed in front of him, he was about to take 2 grapes to eat. However, when he looked up, he saw the black cat at the entrance, craning its neck to look at him. His hand froze. The Jiao Pa noticed Jiao Wei's abnormality and followed his gaze to the door. "Black charcoal, you're back," the Jiao Pa said. Zheng Tan wagged its tail slowly and walked directly to little Pomelo's room. Since there were grapes here, little Pomelo must have grapes too. "My cat is called Black Charcoal. Someone took him out to play last night. He just came back." The Jiao Pa introduced him to them. Zheng Tan was in little Pomelo's room, eating grapes while listening to the conversation in the living room. Although it was difficult to understand because of the dialect, he could roughly understand the conversation. The 2 men were from Jiao Pa's hometown. Although their surnames were Jiao, they were not directly related to Jiao Pa. Most of the people living in their hometown had the same surname. The middle-aged man had a good relationship with Jiao Pa when he was young. He was only a few years older than Jiao Pa. He stopped studying after he finished junior high school and got married earlier than Jiao Yuan. Therefore, his child was 5 or 6 years older than Jiao Pa. If Zheng Tan had not listened to their conversation, he would not have thought that the middle-aged man was only a few years older than Jiao Pa. He looked like he was in his 40s and had a lot of white hair. Zheng Tan did not expect that the middle-aged man was only in his 40s. The young man named Jiao Wei was the one that Jiao Pa and Jiao Ma had talked about a while ago. He had been admitted to Tsinghua University from an ordinary high school in town. It was said that the school in town had even awarded him 20,000 yuan to pay for his university fees. That way, he would not need to take out a student loan. However, from the conversation outside, it did not sound like they were just talking about their child. The middle-aged man wanted to open a small restaurant near Tsinghua University. When they were in their hometown, they did not farm since their child was in high school. The couple had opened a restaurant in town to take care of their child. Now that their child was in university, they were far away from home. The couple only had one child, so they could not bear to part with him. They wanted to bring all their savings to open a restaurant here. However, when they arrived, they saw that the businesses around the university were doing well. It was not easy to open a restaurant. Now they could only ask Jiao Pa. After all, Jiao was more familiar with this area. Jiao agreed. He wanted to find out about the surrounding area first before telling them. At noon, the father and son left after having lunch. They rented a private apartment near the side door. It was the place that Zheng Tan knew was not very safe. However, it was fine as long as they did not go out at night. After all, the rent was low. The father and son rented a small single room and paid for 1 month's rent. At this time, not many people came to rent a room. But in a week's time, there will be a lot of people. When school starts, most of the people are parents accompanying their children to university. All kinds of hotels, hostels, and private apartments are full, and the rent will increase. After the father and son left, Jiao sighed. Time is really catching up with people. Jiao Wei's hair is already white. Although he is in his 3rd year of high school, it should not be this bad, right? Jiao Ma sighed. He said it is hereditary, but I don't know the truth. In the past, that child was not sensible. He only started to learn in his 2nd year of high school. I don't know what he went through, but he became more sensible. He works hard in his studies and helps out at the restaurant. His mother did not allow him to enter the kitchen. The older generation still thinks that a gentleman should stay away from the kitchen. His father had no choice but to do so. But that child is very stubborn. Sometimes, after self-study at night, he will help out at the restaurant to sell fried noodles. When he finally has a break, he will help his father buy groceries. He said that it can relax his mind. Jiao said, "That's how children are. When they can't change, they are infuriating. But when they change, they are heartbreaking. But this young man needs to be sharpened." Jiao Yuan, who was sitting in the room writing words, felt a chill down his spine. He had written a word wrongly. "Can you bear to do that?" Jiao laughed. "Why can't I bear to do that?" Although they said that, both of them knew that they would not be able to do it. In fact, Jiao Wei's parents could not do it. But they could not do it with Jiao Wei's stubbornness. Chapter 97. For the next few days, Jiao had been asking around about the shops and businesses outside. He had not paid attention to this before, but now he had to ask. Jiao Wei's father and Jiao Wei's father had a good relationship when they were young. Moreover, Jiao Wei's father lived with Jiao Wei's father's father. They usually took care of each other and had a good relationship. Otherwise, Jiao Wei's father wouldn't have personally called Jiao Wei's father to ask for help. In fact, Jiao had other considerations. He would be going abroad next year. If Jiao Wei's family was around, they could help take care of his family. Before he went abroad, Jiao Yuan was about to enter junior high school, and Mother Jiao was also in junior high school. Although Chuhua University was not far from that junior high school, roads were being repaired everywhere. Father Jiao did not want the two of them to ride around every day, so he let them eat lunch at school and then go home for dinner in the afternoon. Anyway, the school had a rule that they could not study at night in the 1st and 2nd year of junior high school. It was all voluntary. The parents in the courtyard all agreed to go home at night. Jiao and little Pomelo could go to the cafeteria for lunch. It was not their first time eating there anyway. Jiao office had a foldable bed for lunch break. Little Pomelo could take a nap there. As for Zheng Tan, he could go to the cafeteria with them. After a few days of investigation, Jiao had his eyes on a shop. However, the shop did not used to be a restaurant. Now that the shop wanted to sell, the Jiao came looking for him. He asked Jiao Wei and his son to have a talk. Although the place was not very close to the school gate, there was no other way. The business of the people who were close to the school was very good now. Those who wanted to sell their business had already been taken over. However, Jiao Wei and his son were satisfied with the shop. They were not procrastinators. After they agreed on the price, they wanted to sign the agreement. To be on the safe side, Father Jiao found a young professor from the law school in the courtyard to come over and help. Chu Xiangyang, who lived across the street, heard that an acquaintance of the Jiao family was going to open a restaurant, so he also came over in flip-flops to help. He even politely asked if the restaurant would deliver food in the future. The shop owner looked at the professor, an associate professor, and a talkative young man in front of him. His face twitched a few times. He thought they were just country bumpkins who knew how to cook. But this lineup was weird. There were even professionals present. Why use a sledgehammer to crack a nut? With the help of several intellectuals, Jiao Wei and his son were also relieved. They were afraid of being cheated when they were outside. They had spent a lot of money to set up this shop, but now they felt at ease. They wanted to treat them to a meal, but the young professor and Chu Xiangyang refused. They said that they would come again when the shop was opened in the future. It was not troublesome now. Chu Xiangyang even volunteered to come up with a design. Jiao Wei and his son were very grateful. Chu Xiangyang waved his hand and said, "If your food is to my liking, I will depend on your family to support me in the future." He wondered what Chu Xiangyang's parents would think if they heard this. After they signed the agreement, they still needed to buy some tools, especially tables and chairs. But before they could find a place to buy them, Celestine heard about it when he came to pick up Zheng Tan. He called Yi Hao and asked Yi Hao for some discarded tables, chairs, and miscellaneous items. Although they did not look suitable for a small restaurant like this, they could still make some changes. The quality was good. They did not intend to charge money for these things. Yi Hao and Celestine did not lack money, but Jiao Wei and his son did not agree. They gave Celestine 1,000 renminbi. Celestine took out 2 100 renminbi notes and put the rest back on the table. Celestine was so attentive because he did not want to go to the Jiao family's house to eat every time he came here. He was also not happy to eat outside. It was boring to eat alone. Now that he knew that an acquaintance of the Jiao family had opened a small restaurant, he could still freeload some food and chat with them when he came over. If he stayed out too late, he could even bring some supper for his comrades at the company. Those men weren't used to eating food that was too delicate. Jiao Wei's hometown cuisine should be pretty good. After Jiao Wei's mother came over, the couple did not want Jiao Wei to suffer. They just had to look after the renovation of the shop. There was nothing to buy. Even if they wanted to buy something, there were all kinds of shops around Tsinghua University. There were also a few large supermarkets in the central square. They did not need to worry too much. The couple wanted Jiao Wei to familiarize himself with the school. Jiao Pa originally wanted Jiao Yuan to bring him around the school, but Jiao Wei refused. It was too hot outside, and it was not good to let a child follow him around. Moreover, he already had a map of the school, so he would not get lost. Jiao Pa thought for a while and shouted to Zheng Tan, who was eating grapes in little Pomelo's room. "Black Charcoal, can you help Jiao Wei familiarize himself with the school?" Jiao Wei. In his hometown, many people raised cats. The villagers raised cats to catch mice, so there was no such thing as a pet cat. After Jiao Wei went to school in town, there were some people from better families who kept pets like dogs and cats. Jiao Wei always thought that it was a waste of money. Maybe it was because of his personal situation, but he didn't really understand those people. After coming here, Jiao Wei saw that Uncle Mingsheng, who his parents said was very capable, also had a cat. He also doted on the cat. Although Jiao Wei did not show anything on his face, he had some thoughts in his mind. Not only Uncle Mingsheng's family, but even Chu Xiangyang, who helped them with the design, and Celestine, who helped them with the furniture, treated the black cat very well. Jiao Wei always thought that it was because of Uncle Mingsheng, but he still felt that it was a little strange. Was it really a case of a man ascending to the heavens? However, the people here didn't have much awe when they mentioned the university teachers, associate professors, and professors who they had always thought were high and mighty. At most, it was like how they talked about university students. They were a little envious, but they weren't unreachable existences. Jiao Wei thought about what his homeroom teacher said to him before he came here. In a big city like Tsinghua City, university students might not be worth much. Even graduate students and doctoral students would be overflowing and depreciating in the next few years. No one could explain the cruelty behind the prosperity. They had to rely on themselves to see and adapt. Those who could not adapt might not even be comparable to a cat. When Jiao Wei's thoughts started to wander again, Zheng Tan slowly walked out with the grapes in his mouth. He looked at the person sitting on the sofa with the school map in a daze, and jumped up to pat him on the head. Jiao Wei recovered from his deep thoughts. He thought that Uncle Mingsheng had knocked him, but when he looked up he saw a black shadow flash by. There was only a black cat in front of him. Associate Professor Jiao Jiao was talking in Jiao Yuan's room. Little Pomelo did not come out, so it was obvious who had patted him. After talking to Jiao Yuan for a while, Jiao Pa left the room and said to Jiao Wei, "My cat likes to run outside and is very familiar with the school. If you want to find a building but don't know the place, just tell it. It's best if you speak in Mandarin. It probably won't understand dialects." Okay. Jiao Wei did not really believe Jiao Pa's words, but out of politeness he agreed. Watching the man and the cat go downstairs, Jiao Pa took today's newspaper, opened it, and sat on the sofa to read. Young people were always more open-minded and could easily accept new and strange things. Plus, they would spend more time together in the future, so it was a good thing to let Jiao Wei interact with his cat first. Otherwise, he would be too scared. On the other side, Jiao Wei followed the cat downstairs and realized that there was no access card. Just as he was about to go up and ask, he saw the black cat in front of him jump up and rub against the card swipe area. With a click, the door opened. Jiao Wei was speechless. Zheng Tan ignored Jiao Wei's surprise and walked straight out. It was around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the sun was still shining brightly. However, there were trees planted on the side of the road, so it was cooler to walk in the shade. The giant sycamore trees blocked the sunlight that shone on the road, leaving only a few scattered light spots. Gusts of wind blew, and the light spots on the road flickered as the branches swayed. Jiao Wei looked at the road in front of him and took a deep breath. Just this road alone was many times higher than their school principal. How high could they fly? They had to fly to find out. Sure enough, Zheng Tan was not in the mood to observe what the man behind him was thinking. He was now thinking about which road to take without being burned by the sun. He heard that black absorbed heat. On the sidewalk, the cat walked in front and the man followed behind. Neither of them had decided on their destination. Zheng Tan looked at the road with shade and walked in that direction. When there was no shade, he suddenly realized that he had arrived at the student dormitory. The student dormitory was divided into several areas. The undergraduate students and graduate students were separated. There was a new area at the back, probably for the freshmen. It was the land near the remote forest. The dormitory had been completed and would be ready for use in September. Zheng Tan was now in the graduate student dormitory area. Zheng Tan moved his ears and suddenly heard a familiar sound. Ignoring Jiao Wei, Zheng Tan climbed up a large sycamore tree and looked for the dormitory where the sound came from. When he was close to the 3rd floor, Zheng Tan found the source of the sound. It was a dormitory on the 3rd floor. The windows were all open in summer, and because of the orientation, there was no sunlight shining in at this time. In Tsinghua University, other than the international students' dormitory, the other dormitories did not have air conditioning installed. It was said that air conditioning would be installed in the doctoral dormitory by the end of this year. As for when it would be the turn of the master's and undergraduate students, it was unknown. The most annoying thing was that there was a F*King electricity restriction. High-power appliances could not be used. They could not use little sun in winter, and they could not rent air conditioners in summer. After the students protested, the restriction on electricity in the master's dormitory would be lifted within 2 years. As for the undergraduate students, they could only continue to endure. The weather in Tsinghua City was so hot that people wanted to die from the heat. During the day in the dormitory, just relying on electric fans would not solve many problems. The master's dormitory was not like the undergraduate students. It was divided into 4 rooms, 6 rooms, 8 rooms, etc. All of the dormitories were 4 rooms with separate bathrooms. There was a desk below and a bed above. At this moment, Zheng Tan saw that in the dormitory, there were 4 male students. They moved the closet to make space, and each of them stayed in an inflatable bathtub filled with water. In the middle of the 4 inflatable bathtubs, there was a small stool. On the stool was a chessboard. The 4 of them were playing aeroplane chess. In the larger inflatable bathtub, Su Chu was in it. He had a towel on his head, one hand holding a piece of watermelon, and the other throwing dice. Haha. My last plane is also entering the finish line. Those who lost, hurry up and bring me the watermelon. Don't miss a piece. Those who don't have it, hurry up and cut the melon. As Su Chu spoke, he picked up a toy yellow duck that was floating in the inflatable bathtub and pinched it twice. It made a beeping sound, and he laughed like an idiot. Zheng Tan. Chapter 98. When Zheng Tan came down from the tree, Jiao Wei looked at him strangely. He probably didn't understand why Zheng Tan would suddenly climb up a tree and look into the dorm. Zheng Tan wagged his tail. He didn't care what Jiao Wei thought. After looking at him, he lay down and yawned. There was no shade further ahead. Many of the dorms were built later, so the greenery around them wasn't as good as the old dorms. Most of the trees were small camphor trees. The sycamore trees weren't very tall either. Even if they were tall, they weren't luxuriant enough to block the sun. Also, Jiao Pa only asked Zheng Tan to lead the way. As for where to go, the choice was still up to Jiao Wei. However, that guy didn't say anything for a long time, so Zheng Tan was more casual. After walking for so long, it was time to take a break. Jiao Wei saw that the cat didn't continue walking. He wiped the sweat off his forehead. It wouldn't hurt to rest for a while. There was an on-campus supermarket downstairs. After walking for so long, he was a bit thirsty. Jiao Wei folded the campus map in his hand and walked towards the supermarket. After 2 steps, he stopped and looked back. He was hesitating if he should say something to the cat and ask it to stay where it was. But before he could say anything, he saw the cat running towards the supermarket. Zheng Tan saw Jiao Wei walking towards the supermarket and knew what he was going to do, so he rushed over. He was a bit thirsty too. Besides, he didn't lead the way for nothing. He had to get something in return. Since the cat ran towards the supermarket, Jiao Wei had no choice but to follow it. At this time, there weren't many students in the supermarket. There were only a few waitresses chatting there. A few student couples were sitting at the milk tea stall, enjoying the air conditioning. There was no sign at the entrance that said pets were not allowed. Jiao Wei didn't know if he would be scolded if he brought the cat in, but it wasn't up to him to decide. The cat had already entered the supermarket. A waitress who was cutting watermelon at the door saw the man and cat duo and was about to say something, but in the end, she didn't say anything. Sometimes some students would bring their pet dogs in. As long as they didn't cause any bad effects, no one would say anything. As for cats, it was the first time they saw someone bring them in. Seeing the cat's cat tag hanging on its neck, it looked quite proper. The staff in the supermarket looked at it and continued with their work. Some of them were bored and kept looking at it. This made Jiao Wei feel a lot of pressure. Jiao Wei went inside and took a bottle of mineral water from the fridge. There was nothing else he wanted to buy. He had always been thrifty. He looked at the cat next to him. This cat seemed to be quite sensible. It didn't use a leash, didn't run around on the shelves, and didn't pick up random things. Zheng Tan watched as Jiao Wei took the bottle of mineral water and looked at the fridge beside him. He jumped onto the fridge and looked at Jiao Wei. Does it want to eat ice cream? A waitress walked over, but didn't open the fridge. She was still a little worried about a cat. If the cat jumped into the fridge and was seen by others, she wouldn't be able to sell the ice cream. Zheng Tan looked inside through the transparent sliding door, then patted the place where the ice cream was placed. The waitress looked at Jiao Wei. Seeing Jiao Wei nod, she opened the sliding door and took out a box of 2-colored ice cream. Zheng Tan had an idea of the price of ice cream. Jiao Yuan and the others often used their own pocket money to buy ice cream. They would also discuss the price of different types of ice cream and ice cream. Therefore, Zheng Tan knew which brand was more expensive and which ice cream was more expensive. After getting what he wanted, Zheng Tan jumped down from the fridge and walked towards the exit. "Your cat is so smart," said the waitress who helped him get the ice cream. Jiao Wei's mouth twitched. At this moment, he realized that something was wrong. He bought a 1 yuan bottle of mineral water for himself, but bought a 2 yuan ice cream for his cat. He didn't expect himself to do such a stupid thing. After leaving the supermarket, Jiao Wei found a place with a stone bench under the shade of a tree and sat down. He put the ice cream on the stone table, but didn't open the lid. He just wanted to see what the cat was going to do. Zheng Tan didn't care. It held the ice cream box, then bit the sealed lid and pulled it back. After opening it, it didn't use a spoon. It just licked it with its tongue. Cats had soft thorns on their tongues. Some of the thorns could be scraped off by licking. Jiao Wei choked. No wonder it was the associate professor's cat. Its IQ was really different. But, would the cat have diarrhea after eating ice cream? I should tell Uncle Ming Sheng and the others when I go back. Opening the campus map, Jiao Wei could find the undergraduate dormitory area. It wasn't far from here. Every dormitory was marked with a building number, so it wasn't hard to find. When the semester started, he just had to find out which building he would be assigned to. Tsinghua University was really big. It was far beyond Jiao Wei's imagination. In the past, he had only heard about the university from others. Only after experiencing it for himself did he feel that it was more real and stronger. After resting for a while, Jiao Wei tried to say a few words to Zheng Tan with an awkward accent. Zheng Tan followed Jiao Wei's instructions and took him to see the buildings and teaching areas. On the way back, Zheng Tan took Jiao Wei to some small paths. When they passed by Old Man Lan's small flower garden, the big iron gate of the flower garden was open. Zheng Tan stuck his head in and looked inside. Old Man Lan was wearing a straw hat and busying himself. Old Man Lan was about to get up and drink some water, but when he looked up, he saw Zheng Tan sticking his head in the door. The black fur on his body was too eye-catching. "What are you looking at, little bastard?" Zheng Tan tugged at her ears. What kind of professor was this? She kept calling him little bastard and little bastard. He turned his head and looked at Jiao Wei behind him. As expected, Jiao Wei looked very awkward. In fact, Old Man Lan was only a little more open with people he was familiar with. He was more formal with students and people he was not familiar with. Zheng Tan walked 2 steps inside and saw Jiao Wei still standing outside the door. He looked at him and wagged his tail, indicating for him to follow. Old Man Lan thought Zheng Tan had come out for a walk again. When he saw this, he asked, "Who's outside?" Jiao Wei braced himself and walked in. He looked in the direction of the voice. "Hello, sorry to disturb you." Old Man Lan frowned. "Who are you?" Jiao Wei walked over and explained his background and his relationship with Jiao Pa. Jiao Wei didn't meet Old Man Lan on the 3rd floor when they went to the Jiao family's place. So, this was the first time they met. "Oh, a guest from the Jiao family. You're early. It's not time for registration yet," Old Man Lan said and took out a straw fruit platter. "I just washed horse milk." "It's okay, I brought water. Just eat it." Old Man Lan glared at him. Then he plucked a few fruits and handed them to Zheng Tan. "Jiao Wei. Why was cats treated better than humans?" Jiao Wei sat down on a small stool. He ate 2 fruits and stopped. He was a little restrained. But then he gradually relaxed a little as Old Man Lan asked him questions. He didn't interact much with others before. One reason was because he was nervous in a completely unfamiliar environment. The other reason was because of his dialect. No matter how ambitious he was when he left the small town, it was his first time traveling so far away. It was his first time coming to such a big city. It was his first time being surrounded by people who didn't speak the dialect of his hometown. There was no sense of familiarity. When he got off the train, he still felt a little inferior. Moreover, when he asked for directions, when people heard his accent, they looked at him differently. However, the old man in front of him also spoke with a dialect accent. Although everyone's dialect was different, it still reduced Jiao Wei's nervousness by a lot. Having taught for so many years and taught countless students, Old Man Lan understood the psychology of these new students. "Talk more. You'll get used to it. There are plenty of students like you who would dare to look down on others." Teachers who taught middle school had to take a Mandarin test, but those who taught universities didn't have such a rule. Many old professors had bad accents, but no one dared to laugh at them. They still respected them. Both spoke in dialects, but one was an ordinary student, and the other was an old professor. The treatment was completely different. Zheng Tan was lying on the side, listening to Old Man Lan scolding Jiao Wei with half-truths and half-lies. He ate the fruits in the plate. When Old Man Lan finished speaking, he realized that the milk in the plate had been reduced by half. "Foodie." Old Man Lan rolled up the newspaper beside him and knocked Zheng Tan's head. Then he said to Jiao Wei, "Young man, you're strong enough. Come give me a hand. Move the flower pot. Hey, be careful. You can hurt yourself, but don't drop my flowers." When it was almost 5 o'clock, Old Man Lan followed Zheng Tan and Jiao Wei to the eastern courtyard. The old man swung the small shovel in his hand as he talked to Jiao Wei beside him. Jiao Wei was carrying a pot of flowers. It wasn't heavy, so it was easy for him to carry it. The conversation with the old man wasn't as boring as before. Zheng Tan wasn't interested in listening to their conversation. He wanted to go back quickly, but he felt that it wasn't right. He could only walk and stop. At the same time, he complained that the two were walking too slowly. Along the way, they met a few acquaintances from the courtyard who were heading to the school's swimming pool. They greeted Zheng Tan, Old Man Lan, and asked about Jiao Wei. Old Man Lan only said that he was a temporary helper. Jiao Wei was quite surprised. When he first saw the old man, he thought that he was just a gardener. He saw that the old man was dressed quite plainly, similar to the white singlet that he often wore at home. Now he realized that the old man beside him was also a big shot. What puzzled him the most was the cat. It was normal for people to greet Professor Lan, but why did they also call the cat? Does everyone know black charcoal? Jiao Wei asked the question in his heart. It. Old Man Lan smiled. It's the tyrant of the Eastern District. Who in our courtyard doesn't know it? I heard that a while ago. It brought the cats from the courtyard and fought with the cats from the Western District. Now the cats from the Western District don't dare to come to our courtyard. This was actually a false accusation against Zheng Tan. At that time, it was the cats from the Western District who started the fight. That evening he was playing with De Pang, Huang, and the others in the courtyard. The cats from the Western District came over and were quite fierce. One even climbed over the balcony to steal De Pang's food. Wasn't that asking for trouble? Although he knew that the cats from both sides would fight, he didn't expect them to be so bold as to come to his door. Even the castrated Huang was unhappy. That day they directly beat up the cats from the Western District, and then drove them all the way back to their nest in the Western District. In fact, the cats from the Western District should be glad. That day, the dogs from the courtyard were taken out for a walk, and General wasn't at home. Otherwise, they would have ended up worse. However, it was better for the cats to solve their own problems. Chapter 99. It was the end of August and the beginning of September. The campus was very lively. Parents of new students were everywhere. They were taking pictures of many iconic buildings in Tsinghua University. When Zheng Tan went out for a walk, he saw some parents who were smiling and saying goodbye to their children at the entrance of the dormitory. They were about to leave to catch the train home, but they started to cry after walking a short distance. Some of the aunties cried so much that their makeup was ruined. Jiao Pa said that many parents did not send their children to school because they were afraid that they would miss them. Although those parents did not come, they would also cry for a long time in their hometown after sending their children to the train. Zheng Tan did not understand. At least, he had not experienced it himself. When he was in university, he went to school with a few bad friends. The school was not far from where he lived. Moreover, he had a cold relationship with his parents. He did not feel that way at all. As a father, he did not understand the reluctance to part with his children when they grew up. It was a strange feeling. On the Jiao family's side, Jiao Yuan was brought by Jiao Ma to the junior high school with a few other parents. They did not have to look at the class list like the other students because they already knew which class they were in and which class they were in. With the help of a few special parents, the children in the courtyard were all in the same class. They were afraid that they would be bullied there. The children in the junior high school were immature and impulsive. No one knew if there would be a fight, so it was better for them to stick together. Moreover, if there were any problems, the parents would know in advance so that they could ride home with each other. Jiao Yuan and the others were very happy about this. At noon, they stayed at school for lunch. Jiao Ma was busy at school. Now that she had to take care of Jiao Yuan, she did not go home at noon. She took the other children to eat in the staff cafeteria. Compared to the student cafeteria, the food in the staff cafeteria was slightly better. As little Pomelo had skipped a grade, she was in the 4th grade when school started. She knew some of her classmates such as Ulisha and Xia Xian, who lived in the West District's family compound. One of them was the vice class monitor, while the other was the study committee member. They were considered as the big sisters in the class. Since they were familiar with little Pomelo, Father Jiao was not worried that little Pomelo would be bullied because of her young age. At noon, the after-school music started playing in affiliated primary school. Jiao Wei stood at the entrance of the affiliated primary school and looked at the children running out. He was looking for little Pomelo. Every day at noon, he would come over and wait for little Pomelo to go to his restaurant for lunch. Jiao Wei's small restaurant had just opened. Although its location was not as good as other restaurants, there were a lot of people when school started, and there were many returning customers. During this period of time, business had been good, and they had hired a fellow villager to help out. When he was free, Jiao Wei would also go over to help out, but he was always rejected by his mother, who did not want him to be tainted by smoke and smoke. Originally, Jiao Pa and little Pomelo wanted to eat in the cafeteria, but Jiao Wei's parents asked them to eat in a restaurant. After school, there would be a lot of people, and the cafeteria would be crowded. Besides, home-cooked food was always more comfortable. Jiao Pa wanted to pay, but Jiao Wei's parents refused. In the end, under Jiao Pa's persuasion, they only accepted a small amount. Every time Jiao Pa and little Pomelo went to the cafeteria, the portions of the food were big, and the oil use was also of good quality. Jiao Pa was also busy during this period of time, and he did not have much time. Therefore, the task of picking up little Pomelo fell on Jiao Wei's shoulders. Little Pomelo originally said that she could go by herself. She knew the way, and she was already in the 4th grade. There was no need for an adult to follow her. However, Jiao Pa was not at ease, especially now that there were so many people at the school. There were people who stole wallets, phones, bicycles, and so on. Who could be sure that there were no kidnappers? Jiao Wei was not as gloomy as before. He was more relaxed now, and his Mandarin was more standard and natural. The surrounding dialects made him feel more relaxed. After all, the school was much simpler than the society. Sometimes, people who knew little Pomelo would talk to him, and Jiao Wei would reply with a smile. While waiting, Jiao Wei noticed movement on the wall next to him. He did not need to look to know that it was the Jiao family's precious black cat. When Jiao Wei came to pick up little Pomelo on the first day, Zheng Tan had too much fun outside, so he arrived a little late. After Jiao Wei picked up little Pomelo, he was ready to take her to his shop. However, little Pomelo did not want to leave. She kicked the pebbles on the ground with the tip of her foot and waited at the school gate, looking around from time to time. After asking, Jiao Wei found out that little Pomelo was waiting for her black cat. She would not leave until it arrived. Jiao Wei raised his head and looked at the black cat standing on the wall. During this period of time, he had gradually gotten used to the cat's behavior. He also understood why the Jiao family treasured it so much. Jiao Yuan had told him about the cat's glorious deeds. It was hard to imagine that it was a cat that had done all those deeds. However, the Jiao family seemed to treat it like another child. Jiao Wei could not understand this. No matter how smart and considerate it was, wasn't it still a cat? Zheng Tan could spot little Pomelo among the children at a glance. When he saw little Pomelo, he jumped down from the wall and waited for her to come out before going to Jiao Wei's restaurant to get some food. Jiao Wei's restaurant had a simple shed upstairs. It was built by the original owner and was used to store goods. Now Jiao Wei's parents had a small room for them to rest and take a nap when there were no customers. There was also a folding square table, similar to the one in Jiao Yuan's room. Jiao Pa and little Pomelo usually ate there. Although it was a little hot, the temperature in September was not as hot as it was in July and August. It was fine to plug in an electric fan with a wire. Jiao Wei's family had gotten used to the way the Jiao Pa treated Zheng Tan. Therefore, when they gave the cat food, they treated it the same way they treated humans. Jiao Ma bought a bowl for Zheng Tan and put it there. Today, the Jiao Pa was not free at noon. Xian and the others had already brought lunch for him, so he did not come over to eat. After little Pomelo finished her lunch, Jiao Wei drove her home. At noon he would stay with the Jiao family for a nap. Then he would go to class in the afternoon and drive little Pomelo to school. When he went back he brought a takeout. It was the lunch that Chu Xiangyang had ordered. Just as he walked a few steps into the courtyard, a private car drove in. Jiao Wei looked at it and saw 4 laps. Rich people. Unexpectedly, the car stopped next to them. The car window opened, and a familiar face appeared in front of Zheng Tan. Pomelo Black Charcoal. Little Pomelo looked at the man and grinned. She had a good impression of Feng Xiaokong. She knew that this man was the one who had brought black charcoal home. Therefore, every time she saw Feng Xiaokong, she would smile. Zheng Tan was still the same. He did not react when he saw the man. Who is this? Feng Xiaokong looked at Jiao Wei. After Jiao Wei introduced himself, Feng Xiaokong said, "That's good. Help me move the things later." After Feng Xiaokong parked the car, Zheng Tan went over to see what Feng Xiaokong was carrying. After getting out of the car, Feng Xiaokong lifted little Pomelo up and hugged her. He had a little daughter himself, and he liked to do this. Little Pomelo did not reject this. After hugging little Pomelo, Feng Xiaokong lifted Zheng Tan, who was about to jump into the car to see what was going on. Zheng Tan stepped on his face. Feng Xiaokong did not mind. He smiled and put Zheng Tan down. "You seem to be heavier." Jiao Wei, who was standing next to them, twitched his face. Of course, this cat was a glutton. How could it not be heavy? It ate a big bowl of food every meal. Feng Xiaokong did not say anything else. He opened the car door. There were 2 big cardboard boxes in the back seat. Zhang Zian could not tell what they were. "These are?" Jiao Wei asked. Feng Xiaokong said proudly, "Cat tree." Jiao Wei was speechless. Little Pomelo helped carry Chu Xiangyang's lunch. Jiao Wei and Feng Xiaokong each carried a cardboard box. Jiao Wei did not know what to say. Cat tree cats again. 2 big cardboard boxes. They were quite heavy. They carried the boxes to the 5th floor. After resting for a while, Chu Xiangyang came back with his lunch. He ate and studied the contents of the boxes. Although little Pomelo wanted to see how the cat tree was installed, Feng Xiaokong would not start work during the afternoon nap. He had to wait until after the afternoon nap. Feng Xiaokong wandered to the balcony and called Jiao Pa. "Hello, Mr. Jiao. This is Feng Xiaokong." Jiao Pa answered the phone in a hurry. He did not see the caller ID. When he heard Feng Xiaokong, he did not react immediately. He paused for a few seconds and said, "Oh, Mr. Feng. Hello. I'm at your house now. I've made a cat tree, and I'm going to install it in the afternoon. Let me tell you first. There was no one in the Jiao family's house in the afternoon. So Feng Xiaokong had to tell the owner that he was going to install a cat tree. Jiao Pa did not object. He was looking forward to Feng Xiaokong's work. Jiao Wei, who was sitting in the living room, was speechless at this seemingly rich man. Here was another man who treated cats better than people. He looked at the black cat lying on the edge of the cardboard box. Why couldn't he understand these people? After the afternoon nap, Jiao Wei left to go to class. He also sent little Pomelo to school. Before leaving, little Pomelo looked at the cardboard box in the middle of the living room. Zheng Tan stayed at home and watched Feng Xiaokong assemble the cat tree. Zheng Tan had seen a cat tree in Xiaoguo's house, so he had a general idea of what it was. However, looking at Feng Xiaokong's cat tree, it was slightly different from what he had imagined. Although there were some parts that he did not understand, there were some similarities. For example, the shelf installed in the corner of little Pomelo's room was made of pillars wrapped with hemp rope, pallets, and some planks. The difference was that there were also some things fixed on the wall. Zheng Tan could use the small planks that protruded out of the wall to walk to the newly installed tunnel near the ceiling. From this tunnel, he could walk to the window on little Pomelo's door. When the window was open, he could jump out directly. When the window was closed, he could look into the living room. The shelf was independent. If he felt that it was not suitable to put it here, he could move it to another place in the house. The flannelette on the shelf could be changed and washed, so there was no need to worry about the bacteria growing if it was too dirty. Except for the walkway, near the ceiling and the steps on the wall, most of the other connecting pillars were easy to disassemble and were nail-free. Even without nails, the entire shelf was stable and could be manually disassembled without tools. The space in the Jiao family was too small. Feng Xiaokong could not create the ideal effect, so he could only make do with it. He also wanted to install some in the living room, but after all, it was not his own home, and the space here was too small. After thinking about it, Feng Xiaokong gave up. He would leave the rest of the materials for when the Jiao family wanted to install it. Regardless of make do or not, the Jiao family was quite satisfied with the cat tree. Little Pomelo also liked it very much. Anyway, there were not many things in her room, so it was not a big deal to put a cat tree. Moreover, the remaining space was reasonably used during the assembly, so it looked similar to the previous one. It had to be said that Feng Xiaokong did put a lot of thought into this cat tree. However, on the night that the cat tree was assembled, Zheng Tan, still got into little Pomelo's bed. Chapter 100. Feng Xiaokong was also a busy man. After the Jiao family finished installing the cat tree, Zheng Tan didn't see him again. The next day, Feng Xiaokong took the time to call and ask about the use of the car. Father Jiao only said, "It's pretty good. Charcoal often stays on it during the day when he's at home." Jiao family knew that their cat only slept on the bed and sofa at night. Although he didn't sleep in the cat nest installed on the cat tree at night, Zheng Tan would jump on the cat tree when he was bored during the day. He always felt uncomfortable if he didn't move. In the past, it was inconvenient because of the small space at home. Now that there was a cat tree, he tried his best to move it. Anyway, Feng Xiaokong paid for it, so he didn't feel bad even if it broke. Today, when school was about to end, Zheng Tan walked to little Pomelo's school. Strangely, he didn't see Jiao Wei when he arrived today. A few days ago, Jiao Wei would be waiting for Zheng Tan here before Jiao Wei arrived. Today was the first time. Did something happen? No. To be honest, the end of school in affiliated elementary school was actually a little earlier than the end of classes for college students. At first, Zheng Tan saw Jiao Wei come early, so he thought that Jiao Wei didn't have classes in the morning. However, it seemed that Jiao Wei was always like this, except for today. Zheng Tan lowered his head and pondered. It seemed that he had forgotten something. When the music of the end of class sounded, hurried footsteps approached. "Phew, I made it." Zheng Tan looked sideways. Jiao Wei was wearing a military training uniform. He stood there panting with his hands on his waist. He had just run over, and his face was covered in sweat. Military training. So that's what it was about. Zheng Tan had almost forgotten about it. The freshmen of Tsinghua University started school a little later. They only started to register when the second and third year classes started. The military training would also be delayed for a period of time. Whether it was Exin or Su Chu, they did not have any military training when they started school. Zheng Tan had forgotten about it. Now that he remembered, new graduate students did not have military training, but undergraduate students did. The military training had not even started. What kind of class was Jiao Wei attending? That night, when Jiao Pa told Zheng Tan about it, he found out that freshman classes hadn't started yet. On the other hand, Jiao Wei had been skipping second-year classes. Anyway, once they entered the classroom, the teachers wouldn't know everyone, so they wouldn't check. At the same time, they weren't very unwilling to let those who came to join them. Some teachers especially liked those who came to join them. In Jiao Wei's opinion, Tsinghua University was a good school. Many of the teachers were famous professors. However, it was a huge loss for him to join their classes. Furthermore, it was free to join their classes. Jiao Wei felt that he was taking advantage of them. That was why he was very active. If he didn't have any textbooks, he would borrow them from the library. Many of the freshmen had not completed their application, so Jiao Pa lent him his library card. The books that he was using previously were all borrowed from the library. At noon, when they went to Jiao Wei's restaurant for lunch, they saw some students in military training uniforms everywhere in the small food stores near the school gate. Now, when people saw those in military training uniforms, they knew that they were freshmen. Jiao Wei's parents were heartbroken. However, they were happy to see their son wearing the military training uniform. They said that they would borrow someone's camera to take a few photos as a souvenir. Jiao Wei's father also asked Jiao Wei about the location of the military training. He said that he would go and take a look when he was free. The military training lasted from morning to night. It would last until the holidays. There was plenty of time. Military training. Zheng Tan looked at the sun above his head. The temperature had been rising recently. Hence, that afternoon, after little Pomelo finished her afternoon nap, Zheng Tan and Jiao Wei sent little Pomelo to the affiliated to Renmin University of China. Then Jiao Wei rushed to the military training grounds with a sports cup full of water in his hand. When Jiao Wei ran to the training grounds, he didn't notice that there was a cat following behind him. However, Zheng Tan was running in the bushes and not on the sidewalk. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't notice him. The military training grounds were divided according to the faculties: science, engineering, humanities, social sciences, medicine, etc. They were all in different areas. Anyway, Tsinghua University was big enough. There were a few sports grounds. There was also a phenomenon. For example, the humanities and foreign languages faculties in the humanities and social sciences faculties in the economics and management faculties in the social sciences faculties had a lot of girls. Hence, every time there was military training, there would be a circle of wolves surrounding the training grounds. The opposite was true for the engineering faculties. More than 70% of the students were guys. The remaining 30% were mostly girls. What the F***ck? This was the common thought of all the guys in the engineering faculties. Jiawei and the rest of the engineering faculties were assigned to one of the sports grounds. This was only one of the secondary sports grounds in the school. The surrounding facilities were relatively simple. They were divided into groups according to their faculties, and trained on the track next to the football field. The red plastic track outside the football field was filled with groups of camouflage uniforms. The training hadn't officially started yet, so the students were all gathered together and talking. Zheng Tan saw Jiawei walk towards one of the groups of people and start talking to the people there. It was 2 in the afternoon. The sun was scorching. The high temperature of more than 30 degrees made the freshmen a little listless. Beside the plastic track was a grandstand. There were some trees behind the steps of the grandstand. Although they weren't tall, it was still a little shady on the steps. Zheng Tan squatted on one of the trees and watched Jiawei and the rest being reprimanded by the instructors. In fact, many of the instructors in the university's military training were about the same age as the freshmen. Some might even be younger. However, they were instructors after all. If they told you to stand in formation, you had to stand in formation. If they told you to stand in formation, you had to stand in formation obediently. Zheng Tan enjoyed watching from the tree. He stayed in the shade and there was wind blowing from time to time. It was quite comfortable. However, the people in the military training couldn't take it. Some of them even got heatstroke and had to be helped to the side to rest. However, compared to the people in the humanities department, there were more men here. Their physical fitness was slightly better. If they got heatstroke easily, they would be called sissy or delicate. Therefore, they had to hold it in. Even if it was uncomfortable, they had to endure it. Even if there weren't many girls here, there were still some. They didn't want to give others a bad impression before school officially started. Jiawei hadn't noticed Zheng Tan at first. It was only during the break that he saw him. He looked up and saw a familiar-looking black cat lying on a tree not far away. Everyone just thought it was interesting for a moment. After that, they didn't take it to heart. Who hadn't seen a cat before? There was nothing to be surprised about. However, Jiawei was different. He had a feeling that the black cat was up to something. The next day, Jiawei's premonition came true. The 4 cats squatted side by side on the top step. There was shade there, and they could look down on the students in the military training. Jiawei's eyelids twitched. The 4 cats that he often saw in the courtyard were all here. They were indeed working together. However, because there were instructors watching from the side, Jiawei couldn't keep staring at them. When they were standing in military posture, they couldn't look sideways. Otherwise, they would be punished. The beginning of the military training was basically standing in military posture and marching. Compared to the later stages, it was easier. It was just that standing in military posture was a little uncomfortable. One stand could last for more than 15 minutes, and they couldn't wipe their sweat off. Depang seemed to especially like watching this. It didn't look as lazy as it usually did when it was watching the people in training. Sheriff didn't care. It did whatever the other 3 cats did. As for Huang, it had its eyes on a little doll hanging on the string of a water cup. The students in the military training, including their instructors, all placed the cups neatly on the steps. Some of them even wrote their names on them, afraid that someone would take the wrong one. The 4 cats were squatting side by side. Huang had been staring at the cup. Finally, it couldn't help but take 2 tentative steps forward. Seeing that no one came to stop it, it gathered its courage and moved forward. Then it bent its claws and played with the CS doll on the string of the cup. The good thing was that the cup was filled with water, so it wouldn't fall over after being played with twice. 1 paw wasn't enough. It started to play with the CS doll with both front paws. Sheriff saw that it was having fun, and went over to join in the fun. Sometimes, cats were like that. They wanted to play with everything they saw. If they couldn't move it, they would go up and rub it, moving everything that could move. Finally, the cup with the CS doll fell over. Keep your knees straight, hang your hands naturally, and stick close to the seam of your pants. On the other side, the little instructor looked at the students who were standing in the military posture and told them what to pay attention to. At the same time, he would randomly choose some students and walk behind them to kick their knees or push the arms of the students that were stuck to the seam of their pants. He wanted to see if they were following the instructions or just doing some superficial work. Instructor. Instructor. A student in the square formation said with a sad face, "My cup." When standing in the military posture, don't move casually, don't talk casually, and don't look sideways, the instructor said seriously. Instructor. Instructor. Another person whispered. Before you speak, you have to call for a report. If you want to move or talk, you have to call for a report first. The instructor still looked serious. Report. Instructor, your cup was pushed over. The instructor was speechless. Looking at the place where the cup was placed, the little instructor saw his cup rolling down the steps. The steps of the viewing platform were higher than normal steps, so every time the cup rolled down a step, it made a dong sound. As for the culprit, the cat that looked like a black police officer was raising one of its front paws, tilting its head, and looking at the cup that was rolling away. Then, its gaze landed on a cup next to it. The mouth of the cup was retracted, and the lid was sharp. It looked quite special. Then it stretched out its paw and pushed the sharp lid. Dong, gurgle, gurgle, gurgle. Another cup rolled down the steps. There was one more person in the square formation with a constipated face. Zheng Tan turned his head. This has nothing to do with me. No matter what, the four cats were quite happy to see the military training of the students. During the day, Zheng Tan watched them bask in the sun until they were about to collapse. At night, he watched them feed mosquitoes, and when they stood in the military posture, they couldn't even scratch the mosquitoes that bit them. They didn't always stare at the same square formation. Sometimes they would watch a square formation in the morning, change to another one in the afternoon, and change to another one at night. Chapter 101. At night, although there was no moonlight and only a few stars could be seen, the military training area was lit up and the surroundings of the field were illuminated clearly. Rest here for 5 minutes. As soon as the instructor finished speaking, the group of people who were standing there in a military posture sat down on the ground like soft mud. Pa. The sound of a mosquito being swatted could be heard. Oh my God and Buddha. A student in the same dormitory as Jiao Wei looked at the blood and mosquito corpses on his hands and shouted, "Do you think it was easy for me to produce so little blood? Why did it not let go of such a small amount of blood?" Don't be disrespectful to Buddha, another roommate of Jiao Wei said. Buddha is merciful. Just treat it as if I was farting. You were farting just now. Don't think that I don't know just because you shouted so loudly. Do you want to be Buddha? Jiao Wei asked his roommate with a smile. No, Buddha is so tiring. I have to deliver all living beings from suffering. I just want to graduate successfully, find a job, find a wife, have a child, and live an ordinary and long life. The roommate was silent for a while and said, I don't want to participate in such a high-end topic. Hey, didn't you say that taking vitamin B1 can prevent mosquito bites? Why did I still get bitten after taking it? It varies from person to person. It's better to go back and sprinkle some toilet water. At night, the military training area was filled with toilet water, essential balm, mosquito bites, and other anti-mosquito scents. However, the mosquitoes that grew in Tsinghua University were always fearless. At 9:30 p.m., the day's military training ended. Jiao Wei did not go back to the dormitory with his roommates. Instead, he walked towards the school gate. Every night, he would go to his small restaurant to take a look and help tidy up some things. He would only go back when the restaurant was closed. When he went back to the dormitory, he would also bring some supper for his roommates. Today, when Jiao Wei arrived at his small restaurant, although there was still some distance, he could see some people sitting inside. Usually, there would be no one around at this time. What was going on today? By the time Jiao Wei arrived at the entrance of the small restaurant, the people inside were already walking out. Among these people, The leader had a cigarette in his mouth. His hair was dyed yellow, and he looked a little sloppy. Jiao Wei's heart skipped a beat. He stopped paying attention to those people and rushed into the store. Seeing that his parents were fine, he heaved a sigh of relief. "What's wrong?" Jiao Wei asked. "Are those people here to pick a fight?" Jiao Wei had heard people say that some shop owners would hire people to cause trouble for other shops when they saw that business was doing well. That was why they were so anxious. "It's okay, don't worry." Jiao Wei's father waved his hand. No matter how much Jiao Wei asked, his parents refused to tell him anything. The next day he had to talk to the person he had hired to help him out. Yesterday evening, after the rush hour, the number of people who came to the restaurant gradually decreased. Then, a few people who didn't seem to be easy to deal with came in and said that they wanted to pay the sanitary fee. However, Jiao Wei's family had already paid the sanitary fee, and there was a receipt. Obviously, in that case the sanitary fee had a different meaning, whether it was sanitary fee or management fee, and so on. In some cases, it meant protection fee. When he was in a small town, Jiao Wei's family's shop was a little more formal, but they had also paid this kind of fee. It was just that Jiao Wei didn't know about it. Therefore, after Jiao Wei figured out the reason, he was very angry. When he went to find his parents, he told them that he would call the police if things didn't work out. Jiao Wei's father, on the other hand, was relatively calm. He even laughed and joked a little. Then he told Jiao Wei about the stakes involved. In fact, the people who did business in the surrounding area, whether it was small shops, street stalls, or students who set up night markets, had all encountered this kind of situation. He asked the surrounding shops to see how much they had paid. When he found out that his shop had paid a little more, he wasn't too angry. After all, his family was new here, and they were foreigners. It didn't matter if they didn't have a foundation. After talking, they paid a month's worth of fees. When Jiao Wei's parents were preparing to open a shop here, they were actually mentally prepared. They just didn't expect it to come so soon. The couple used to be honest people, but in the first 2 years of starting a business, they had some experience. Now, since Jiao Wei had already exposed this layer of paper, the couple shared some of their experiences with Jiao Wei. Originally, the couple thought that their child's job in the future would definitely be like those high-class white-collar workers on TV. He wouldn't have to face those who would cause trouble and collect protection fees. However, no matter what position it was, there were hidden rules. If you were strong, it would be fine. If you were just an ordinary person, it would be better to follow the rules. After listening to his parents' experiences, Jiao Wei didn't feel good. He wasn't stupid, and he knew that this was the truth. However, he was still a young man after all. After all, he was still hot-blooded. In the past, before he settled down to focus on his studies, he had also gotten into fights, quarreled with teachers, and flipped tables. Jiao Wei wasn't sure if he would fight with those people if he saw them again. After lunch in the afternoon, Jiao Wei sat at the entrance of the small restaurant and helped peel potatoes. The shop was full of people, so he didn't sit inside. It was more ventilated outside. Although his parents stopped him from doing it, Jiao Wei was stubborn. He wasn't afraid of being laughed at. What's wrong with helping his family peel potatoes? Who said that university students couldn't peel potatoes? It wasn't like he did anything shameful. As he was peeling, the owner of the shop next door came over. The shop next door mainly sold noodle food. It was owned by a young couple. During this period, the two families had become more familiar with each other. The owner of the shop next door also knew Jiao Wei. "I heard that someone came to your shop last night?" the owner said. Yesterday, the noodle shop next door had something to do, so it was only open for half a day in the morning. The owner had heard about Jiao Wei's shop from the people around him. "Yes," Jiao Wei responded. He didn't want to talk about this topic. The strength of his hands peeling the potatoes increased. The boss smiled. "Don't be upset. Actually, everyone is the same. My family was the same. At that time, I had just graduated and didn't know the rules here. I even wanted to call the police, but my wife stopped me. She took the attitude of keeping the peace and handed over some things first. After that, we found someone and didn't meet them again." Seeing that Jiao Wei didn't say anything, but his peeling of potatoes slowed down a lot, the owner knew that he was listening. The owner pointed at the hot pot shop opposite. When this shop opened not long ago, business was very good. After that, there was a period of time when 10 or so hooligans came to eat in the shop. At first, they still paid the bill. Later on, they started to cause trouble. In the end, they even asked how much money they wanted. The owner wasn't a pushover. Although he told those people to come the next day, he found someone at night. In the end, those hooligans didn't come the next day. They also didn't appear in his shop again. Also, the person who sold meat vegetable rice called a group of people over when he encountered such a situation. He was prepared to go all out. In the end, he was chased away by the police. However, those hooligans didn't look for him again. Hooligans also bullied the weak and feared the strong. If they knew that you were a tough nut to crack, they wouldn't come. If they couldn't be polite with them, they would be ruthless. This was how society was now. As a person, one had to be ruthless. At that time, there was no lack of hooligans who deliberately showed off their tattoos. They even put all kinds of steel pipes and knives in their cars. In the end, they still ended up like that. In the past, there was a period of severe crackdown, and those people disappeared for a long time. Now they are gradually reappearing. However, in the past, they were mostly hooligans. Now that they have reappeared so quickly, it probably won't be easy to deal with them. If you know the police or the people in charge of this area, you can go over and take a look. It's necessary to spend some money in this area. After all, everyone wants to do business. There are also some shops in the surroundings that haven't been targeted. Even if the owners of those shops aren't locals, they have been here for many years and have some connections. I don't know if they have other connections. As for people like your family, you can first check out the situation and ask the nearby shops to find out who is in charge of this. Then you can pay a visit to the boss. If there is someone looking after you, of course, it will be fine. If this doesn't work, try other ways. Everything is difficult at the beginning. You just have to get through it. If there is really no other way, just hand it over. Otherwise, you will be the one who suffers. We came out to seek money, not to seek fame. But the situation is better than people. You also don't know when the next crackdown will be, so. The boss didn't finish his words. His wife called him, so he responded and hurried back. Jiao Wei was still sitting there, peeling potatoes absent-mindedly. It sounds so hot. The sudden voice next to him startled Jiao Wei. He turned around and saw Su Chu standing there eating a bowl of rice. "Senior Su, why don't you go to the shop and sit down to eat?" Jiao Wei said. Because of Jiao Pa, Su Chu and Exian knew Jiao Wei. Sometimes, when they were out of school, they would patronize his shop. "It's okay. There are a lot of people over there, so I came out to take a breather." I didn't expect to hear those words. If the boss didn't mention it, I wouldn't have known about it. In the past, when my classmates set up street stalls, they didn't mention it. I don't know if it's because they didn't encounter it or because they didn't want to talk about it. Su Chu said incoherently as he stuffed rice into his mouth. But I think that the clubs that are doing well don't need to rely on this method to survive. Those people are probably just small fries. You don't have to give them face. If you want to find someone to fight, count me in. Su Chu's big body was indeed quite oppressive. However, Jiao Wei wouldn't use such an extreme method. He couldn't afford to gamble. His parents were here, and they were old. Jiao Wei didn't want anything to happen to them. Even if he won, what guarantee would he have? "Then Senior Su, do you know people in this field?" Jiao Wei didn't know how to describe it. Su Chu understood what he meant. However, he hadn't been here for long. Most of his life was spent in the laboratory, dormitory, and cafeteria. This was the first time he heard of such a thing. "I only know my boss," Su Chu said helplessly. Jiao Wei shook his head. "Don't bother Uncle Mingsheng. He has already helped us a lot. Besides, he has 2 kids. Oh, Su Chu wiped his mouth. Then his eyes lit up. "You know that Celestine guy, right? I know him, but I'm not familiar with him. He came here before the shop opened. After that, he hurriedly ordered takeout and left. Can he do it?" "I heard a little from my senior. You can give it a try. But if you want to find Celestine, you have to find Uncle Mingsheng. I'm just telling you what I know. As for whether you believe me or not, it's up to you." "Okay." Su Chu threw the empty disposable lunchbox into the trash bin and said, "If you really want to ask Celestine for help, you don't have to go through my boss." "What do you mean?" "My boss's cat." Chapter 102. Jiao Wei would never have thought that Su Chu would give such an answer. In fact, no normal person would think of such an answer. People who didn't know better would think that Su Chu was joking. After all, it was just a cat. How much could it help? Eat it. Seeing Jiao Wei's expression, Su Chu knew what he was thinking. He scratched his head. "Hey, I'm just saying. Believe it or not, it's up to you." "Why that cat?" Jiao Wei squeezed out this sentence after thinking for a long time. "How should I put it? My senior brother, Exian, is definitely more familiar with the boss's family. That's why he knows more about the boss's family. Sometimes, my senior brother would tell me a little about the boss's family. Among them, he talked about the cat the most. It's the boss's baby. Like Lord Zeng, Miss Zhao, Professor Lan, and some other people. Although they usually have a good relationship with my boss, they are all related to the cat. Oh, there's another person. A professor who returned from overseas. He was a famous person in our school last semester, but he was kicked out. I heard from my senior that it's also related to the cat. Although many people didn't know the real reason for Ren Chang's case, people like Exian who had a close relationship with the Jiao family could make some inferences." Hearing Su Chu's words, Jiao Wei stopped peeling potatoes. He didn't know many of the people that Su Chu mentioned, but he knew Professor Lan. Not long after he came here, he was taken to Professor Lan's small garden by the cat. It seemed like Su Chu was right. After all, compared to Associate Professor Jiao, those people were much more capable. Why would they care about an associate professor with no background? I heard a lot of things from my senior, so I don't know much about them. However, if you want to find Celestine, you can keep an eye on the cat first. Every time Celestine comes here, he only looks for the cat. There's one more thing. Maybe you don't believe me, but it was also because of that cat that I was able to work for the boss. Su Chu recalled that after he became Associate Professor Jiao's student, he once mentioned it to Exian. Exian analyzed it. Looking at the time, it was getting late. Su Chu took his leave first. He still had classes in the evening. Jiao Wei sped up and peeled the remaining potatoes. Then he tidied them up and rushed to the military training area. The evening training was about to begin. Jiao Wei had been thinking about Su Chu's words. When he saw the cat the next day, he felt a little awkward. Zheng Tan had no idea what Jiao Wei was thinking. He, Fatty, and the others had recently moved to a different place to watch the military training. The people at Jiao Wei's training ground had started to guard against cats. Every time the cups were placed, there would be a few people sitting there. Once Zheng Tan and the others got close, those people would chase them away. Therefore, Zheng Tan and the others didn't just stay at one training area. Since there were so many places for military training, they would go and watch whenever they found a suitable place. It was quite interesting to see those people make a fool of themselves during training. There were also talent shows, singing and dancing during break time. The girls' performance was better. After school at noon, Zheng Tan and little Pomelo followed Jiao Wei to the small restaurant. They felt that someone was staring at them. When they turned around, they saw Jiao Wei looking away uncomfortably. What was going on? Zheng Tan was puzzled. Did Jiao Wei have something against him? And Depang watching the military training? When they arrived at the small restaurant and ate at the folding table, Zheng Tan felt Jiao Wei's gaze from time to time. His appetite became worse. The man and the cat stared at each other for a few seconds. Jiao Wei looked away again. He felt that the cat's gaze was quite strange. It was indescribably strange. It was as if it wasn't a cat's gaze but a human's. Jiao Wei had heard people say that some cats would express their thoughts. You could tell what they were thinking just by looking at their eyes. Although he couldn't tell what the cat was trying to express from its eyes, Jiao Wei at least knew that the cat wasn't in a good mood. When it was almost 11, the military training was coming to an end. The weather wasn't as bad as before. The pretty boys at the beginning of school were now a few shades darker. If you asked the 3rd and 4th year students what was the craziest thing during the military training, it would most likely be taking photos. When they were at their ugliest and darkest in university, the school took a photo of them, and this photo would be recorded in the system. It would appear on their various cards in the next 4 years, such as library cards, level 4 and 6 cards, and so on. At this time, the one-card system hadn't appeared in Tsinghua University yet. Therefore, a lot of the cards were separated. Every time they went to the library to borrow books, the auntie in charge of borrowing books would stare at the tanned faces on their cards, and then stare at them for a long time. Especially those who were more concerned about their reputation. They would beat their chests and stomp their feet when they talked about their experiences. When this batch of new students were taking photos, Zheng Tan was squatting on a tree not far away and listening to the complaints of the students. Yawning, Zheng Tan gloated for a while. It was said that a white complexion could cover 100 ugliness. Now that most people were tanned, it wasn't possible to find a few good-looking girls. On the day of the military training review, Zheng Tan, Depang, and the sheriff all went to take a look. Huang wasn't there. He had eaten something bad, and was taken to Shaogua to see a doctor. Even if he was here, Huang wasn't very interested in these things. After the review in the morning, they were sent off to the instructor in the afternoon. Regardless of how they were trained during the military training, under the influence of that kind of atmosphere, there were many people who were red-eyed. The relationship between men could be smashing bricks against each other one moment, and the next moment, they could smoke, drink, and talk about women together. Young people were impulsive easily. When the atmosphere was hot, it was different. Even Zheng Tan, who was squatting on the side, was a little affected. He recalled his own situation when he entered the university. It seemed like he didn't participate in the military training. He spent some money to go to the hospital to write a note, then asked the school leaders to sign it and left. Now it was a pity. Zheng Tan stretched his body and jumped down from the tree. He walked back home. Jiao Ma said they were having dumplings for dinner. After sending off the instructor, Jiao Wei and his roommates returned to their family's restaurant to help out. His roommates also came over to have a good meal. At the same time, they were thinking about what to do for the next 2 days. After the military training, they had 2 days of free time. Other than holding a class meeting, they had nothing else to do. So, they planned to go out and see the sights. Jiao Wei's parents were also helping him. No matter what, their son was only 18 or 19 years old. Young people should be more active. After giving Jiao Wei some money, Jiao Wei's father asked him to go out with his roommates and classmates to take a look at the city. Ever since he came to Tsinghua City, he hadn't taken a good look at this new bustling metropolis. At night, when they returned to the dormitory, the few of them studied the famous sights in Tsinghua City. Jiao Wei was staying in an 8-person room. Compared to the 4-person rooms, the accommodation was much cheaper. Initially, his parents did not agree as they were afraid their son would suffer. But Jiao Wei felt that other than sleeping, he did not have much time to stay in the dormitory. There was no need for him to stay in a 4-person room. Furthermore, even if it was an 8-person room, it was still much better than his high school's accommodation. At least his bed would not creak when he climbed up. At night, the few people in the dormitory chatted until late into the night. Although Jiao Wei responded a few times, his mind was still thinking about that matter. Seeing that September was almost over, would those people still come in October? Should he try to find that cat? But what should he say? Should he stand in front of a cat and say, "Hey, do me a favor, and I will give you fish to eat"? Others might think he was crazy. Sigh, this is not good. The next morning, Jiao Wei and his classmates went to the cafeteria for breakfast. Their plan was to go to each scenic spot according to their planned route after breakfast. They had even bought their bus cards, and made a list of which bus to take to avoid getting lost. After breakfast, the few of them walked out. Jiao Wei saw a familiar black figure on the path not far from the cafeteria. "You guys go ahead first. Just wait for me at the bus stop. I have something to do and will catch up with you later," Jiao Wei said to his roommates hurriedly. "What's the matter? Do you need help?" "No need, you guys go ahead first." After saying that, Jiao Wei ran towards the path. Zheng Tan was preparing to walk around the forest. He had not been there for a long time. He wanted to climb some trees and exercise. She had eaten too much in the morning, so she didn't run now. She walked slowly in that direction until she heard familiar footsteps. "Black charcoal." "Wait!" Jiao Wei shouted as he ran. He was afraid that the cat would disappear. Zhang Tan stopped and turned his head to look at the person running towards him. He did not know why Jiao Wei stopped him. Yesterday this guy said that he wanted to go out with his classmates. Was he not leaving yet? After Jiao Wei ran over, he looked at the cat in front of him, and did not know what to say. Looking around, although there were not many people on the path, there were still some students walking towards them. After thinking about it, Jiao Wei said tentatively, "Let's find a place where there is no one and talk." If he had not been in contact with this cat for a while, and if he had not heard Su Chu's story, Jiao Wei would never talk to a cat like this. Zhang Tan pulled his ear. He did not know what this guy wanted. However, since he was bored, he thought of a suitable place and walked towards it. After 2 steps, he stopped and looked at Jiao Wei, signaling him to follow. Jiao Wei scratched his nose, looked around, and then followed the cat in front of him. They did not walk too far. They came to a small flower bed. It was more secluded and there was no one around. They would not be heard if they spoke. Zhang Tan jumped onto the flower bed and looked at Jiao Wei, waiting for him to continue. Jiao Wei said this and that for a while, then asked, "Can you help me contact Celestine?" Celestine? Why would he look for that guy? Zhang Tan looked at Jiao Wei suspiciously. However, speaking of which, Wei Lung had not been here for a while. That fellow had said last time that he did not want to come because he did not want to see the freshman's military training. That would make him miss his military career, so if he wanted to come, he would wait until the military training was over. Looking at the time, the military training was over. Celestine should be coming over in 2 days. How about this? If Celestine comes to find you next time, can you bring him to my restaurant? Jiao Wei said hesitantly, then looked at the cat's reaction. Zhang Tan did not know why Jiao Wei was looking for Celestine, but if it was only like this, he could still help. So he raised a hand and looked at Jiao Wei. Jiao Wei did not understand the cat's meaning, so he did not move. Zhang Tan. Stupid. Walking over, Zhang Tan patted the back of Jiao Wei's hand. This was the way Zhang Tan, Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo were used to. If they agreed, they would pat their paws. That was why they were doing this now. After patting, Zhang Tan jumped off the flower bed and walked towards the forest. Chapter 103. Celestine came the day after Zhang Tan agreed to help. Like before, Celestine first called Jiao Pa to inform him, then went to the eastern courtyard. He looked around and didn't find Zhang Tan, so he pressed the horn rhythmically. Zhang Tan was sleeping on a tree nearby. Hearing the horn, he jumped down from the tree and came to Celestine's car. However, unlike before, Zhang Tan didn't directly jump through the open window this time, but walked outside. "Hey, Black Charcoal, where are you going?" "A star is going to the night building tonight. It's a rare opportunity," Celestine said as he drove to catch up with Zhang Xian. Zhang Tan trotted out of the school gate. This time he didn't run directly through the grass, but directly on the sidewalk so that Celestine could see him. After leaving the school gate, he went to Jiao Wei's small restaurant. In the car, Celestine felt strange. What does the cat want to do? It wasn't easy to drive further into the street, so Celestine parked his car at a place in front of the school gate, then went to Jiao Wei's small restaurant. When he arrived, Zhang Tan was already squatting on a chair, waiting for him. Jiao Wei's parents were already familiar with each other, so they weren't too surprised to see Zhang Tan. However, when they saw Celestine, one of Jiao Wei's parents came to greet him warmly. After all, Celestine had helped them before, while the other went to call their son's dormitory. When Jiao Wei came back yesterday, he had told his parents that if the cat came with Celestine, they should call him immediately. If he wasn't in the dormitory, they should try to get Celestine's phone number, or directly tell Celestine his dormitory number. When Celestine was free, they could contact him. Although his parents didn't think it was a good idea to ask Celestine's phone number, since their son had asked, and if there was no one in the dormitory, they could only try. Fortunately, Jiao Wei and the others didn't go out today. They were too tired yesterday, so they all rested in the dormitory today. After receiving a call from the restaurant, Jiao Wei hurriedly took his bag and rushed to the restaurant. He was prepared to go to the restaurant to help at this time, but if Celestine came, Jiao Wei would bring more money, just in case. He had heard people say that when asking for help, one had to be polite. Even if Celestine didn't want it, there were others. Speaking of which, Jiawei was still thinking about this last night. He was still skeptical about the cat, but he didn't expect to receive news the next day. Sure enough, as Su Chu said, this cat's ability was really quite big. Celestine, who was sitting in the restaurant, was quite confused. Seeing that Jiawei's parents were a little embarrassed, he waved his hand. You two go ahead, don't worry about me. The students will be coming out soon. Celestine didn't plan to eat here, so he asked Jiawei's father to bring a glass of water. Black charcoal, what's the matter? Why did you bother to ask me to come here? Celestine looked at the cat on the chair next to him and asked. Zheng Tan didn't answer. He didn't even know, so how could he answer Celestine? Jiawei ran over. Their dormitory was a little far from here, and the school bus always stopped on the way. Therefore, he didn't take the bus. It seemed like it was better to buy a bicycle. It would be more convenient to go in and out. And when the restaurant started to provide takeout, he could also help with the delivery. After drinking 2 glasses of water, Jiawei said to Celestine, Uncle Wei, there's something I need your help with. Don't say uncle, and you. I feel like I'm a lot older. Celestine laughed and got up to leave. He knew that Jiawei's words couldn't be said here. He couldn't let his parents hear it. Jiawei said goodbye to his parents, took his bag and followed Celestine out. Zheng Tan followed. He was also curious about what it was that needed Celestine's help. After leaving the restaurant, Jiawei was a little embarrassed and told Celestine about the situation in his restaurant. He hoped that Celestine could provide some information. At least he would know who to give the gift to. Ever since the incident in his restaurant, Jiawei had asked some of his classmates and indirectly asked some of the other restaurants. He knew more things that outsiders didn't know. Sometimes, after paying the fee, it was not as if nothing had happened. Someone might come to find trouble. Jiawei was thinking of taking a step back now. As long as his parents could safely run this shop, it would be fine as long as they didn't cause any trouble. Besides, he was indeed a newcomer, so it was better to show some goodwill. Zheng Tan was beside him and pulled his ear. That's all it took. But it was true. It wasn't easy to be an ordinary person, especially an outsider who didn't have any background. That's the situation. So, I want to ask if you can give me some advice. Jiawei was a little nervous. After glancing at Celestine, he lowered his head. His hands that weren't carrying the bag were in his pockets. His palms were sweaty. Celestine didn't bother with the words uncle, and you this time. He shook his head and said, I'm not a local and I don't know much about this place. But Jiawei was a little discouraged when he heard Celestine's words. But there was hope when he heard the last sentence. But it's possible to solve the problem, but it's a little overkill. Anyway, you don't have to worry about this. Those people probably won't come next month. If they come again, just call me. Celestine told Jiawei his phone number. Jiawei quickly took out a piece of paper and wrote it down. Zheng Tan thought that Celestine was probably going to find Senior Walnut or Yi House people. One was white, the other was black. But no matter which side it was a waste of talent. Celestine had a good impression of Jiawei. From the few times they met, the young man was a good person. He was ambitious, but that wasn't a bad thing. As long as he had a good heart, it was fine. That Uncle Wei. Jiawei didn't know how to express himself. He didn't expect Celestine to take over this matter. Thank you. I'll treat you to a meal when the time comes. Wei Ling knew what Jiawei was thinking the moment he heard what Jiawei said. Let's not talk about giving gifts and money. How about this? I'll eat at your place for free. Of course. You can go whenever you want. Jiawei was happy to be able to solve the problem of his store. Oh yeah, you don't have anything going on today, right? Celestine asked. No. Jiawei quickly answered. Although he originally planned to help his family look after the store, he was afraid that Celestine had other things to do, especially things related to his store. Then let's go together. I'll take you out to play today. Young man, why are you always bored in school? Celestine walked to the parking lot as he spoke. Jiawei went home and talked to his parents. Then he got into Celestine's car. You can sit in the front passenger seat. Celestine said to Jiawei. The back seat is for black charcoal. That guy will roll around in the back seat when he's bored. You'll be disliked if you sit there. Don't take up its space. Jiao Wei was speechless. He was not as good as a cat. Black charcoal, Housie will bring the Monseigneur over today, Celestine said as he drove. That big cat? Zheng Tan thought for a moment. Speaking of which, she hadn't seen that big cat for a while. She heard that after following Yi Hao, that cat was doing quite well. Master Tang the Seventh always showed off outside, showing off in front of everyone. Jiao Wei sat in the front passenger seat obediently and listened to Celestine talking to the cat in the back seat. Although the cat in the back seat did not reply, Celestine did not stop talking. Jiao Wei did not know anything about the Monseigneur or the NB band. When they arrived at the night building, Jiao Wei was a little dumbfounded. Yesterday he and his classmates passed by here. When they were on the bus, they saw the night building outside. They discussed it with a few of their roommates and wondered when they would have a chance to go inside. However, they heard that the cost of living there was extraordinarily high. Jiao Wei looked at his casual clothes that did not match the surroundings at all. At first he felt a little awkward. However, when he saw Celestine, he calmed down a little because Celestine was also wearing casual clothes. Just like before, Celestine did not enter through the front door. Jiao Wei followed the man and the cat in front of him and entered through a side door. Not long after they entered Celestine's exclusive room, Yi Hao came in with the Monseigneur. After the fall of the one above, Yi Hao did not need to hibernate anymore. He was so busy that no one could see him. Today he happened to be free, so he came to the night building to rest and have a few drinks with Celestine. Zheng Tan looked around. Beside Yi Hao was Leopard. It was the same as usual. He did not see Ranqi. He guessed that Ranqi was now afraid of cats. It was different from the last time he saw it. The big cat now indeed had the demeanor of a Monseigneur. Whether it was a CFH or a so-called super cat, it was still a cat. Cats were originally a little arrogant. In the past, the big cat lived a wandering life, so its fur was not so smooth. Now not only was it smooth and shiny, it was also a little stronger. Its mental state was also good and it was majestic. When it walked in, its tail was raised like a banner, and it was almost labeled tall, rich and handsome. The Monseigneur was quite well behaved beside Yi Hao. After it came in, it squatted by the side and did not wander around. It was not like Zheng Tan, who would lie down on the sofa, jump to the coffee table to eat and drink, and then go to the bathroom. It was a lot of trouble. However, this was the first time that Jiao Wei had seen the Monseigneur. It was also the first time that he had seen such a big cat. Just now he thought it was a dog. But when he looked again, what a big cat. This is the child of Black Charcoal's acquaintance. He is studying at Tsinghua University. Celestine introduced him to Yi Hao. Jiao Wei noticed that when Celestine introduced him, he said Black Charcoal's family, and not Associate Professor Jiao's family. This sentence was worth thinking about. Yi Hao said, "Oh," and did not ask any more questions. Instead, he started chatting with Celestine. Anyway, it was not a confidential topic. He was not afraid that Jiao Wei would hear it. Besides, since he was an acquaintance of Black Charcoal's family and was brought here by Celestine, he would not harm him. "By the way, how's the project going?" Celestine asked. Speaking of this, Yi Hao frowned. "I can't get in touch with him. His secretary always says that he is busy and we need to make an appointment. But there are so many people who want to make an appointment. The queue lasts for more than 10 days. Third Master Feng is very busy every day. It is normal for him to be busy. You are not the only one who receives this kind of treatment." Celestine took the bottle of erguotu, clinked it with Yi Hao's and drank 2 mouthfuls. Yi Hao glanced at the black cat, who was squatting on the side eating peanuts. "Yeah, Third Master Feng even gives the cat a climbing frame when he is busy every day." Celestine spat out a mouthful of wine. "What? Third Master Feng gave the cat that thing? He personally gave it to him?" "Yeah." This was the information that Yi Hao had found out after much effort. Jiao Wei, who was sitting on the side, lowered his head. The alpaca in his heart began to gallop. It can't be what I think it is, right? It is indeed a relationship that goes through trials and tribulations together. "Housie, you have to hold on tight to this cat's leg," Celestine said with a smile. He emphasized through trials and tribulations together. Zheng Tan pulled his ears. pretending that he did not understand the meaning of this word. He really did not want to think about those days. Although Celestine's words sounded like a joke, it was also reasonable. Yi Hao also planned to not talk about the project when he met the third Master Fang. He planned to mention this cat first. Chapter 104. Jiao Wei had never thought of riding on a cat's coattails before. In fact, normal people wouldn't even think of riding on a cat's coattails. But now, Jiao Wei had really encountered it. Jiao Wei didn't know who the two people drinking sorghum wine with Celestine in such a high-end place were. He also didn't know the background of the third Uncle Fang they were talking about, but he was sure that the two were big shots, and the seemingly unreliable third Master Fang was obviously of a higher status. Yi Hao only stayed for a while before leaving, and the Monseigneur followed him. Zheng Tan didn't mind, since he wasn't familiar with the big cat, and he was just here to play. When the performance at the East Palace started, Zheng Tan leaned against the open window and looked down. As for Celestine, as usual, he started to fish for information. Previously, he was fishing for information from Ajin, and this time he was fishing for information from Jiao Wei. The topic of conversation was still about the third Master Fang. Celestine was really curious about the third Master Fang's thoughts. After coming to Chuhua City, he actually gave a cat tree to a cat when he was so busy. Unfortunately, Celestine was going to be disappointed this time. Jiao Wei had only met third Uncle Fang for a short while, and didn't know anything else. Celestine looked at the cat lying there listening to the performance, and sighed. He wanted to help but couldn't even get some information. It wasn't just Yi Hao, but also Tianyuan Genetics. A few partners had already asked Yuan Zi about the third Master Fang. Celestine originally wanted to help, but unfortunately, he couldn't get any information. As for Associate Professor Jiao, it wasn't suitable for him to fish for information. That would only make people think that he was insatiable. And Associate Professor Jiao had no intention of getting close to them. It was lucky to be able to get close to the third Master Fang, and it was all thanks to the cat. The rest was up to him. Thinking about the fortune cat Yuan Zi kept in the office, Celestine wanted to laugh. It was a pure black cat that Yuan Zi had specially made. Regardless of whether he was in the scientific research industry or not, as a businessman, he was always particular about this. After taking a sip of wine, Celestine sighed in his heart. It really is a fortune cat. They didn't stay too late today. At around 9 o'clock, Celestine asked someone to drive Zheng Tan and Jiao Wei back to school. The driver had been here many times, and he was familiar with the road. He drove directly from the east gate of Chuhua University, and stopped at the gate of courtyard. Jiao Wei also got out of the car here. Looking at the black cat that jumped out of the car window and ran towards the family building, Jiao Wei felt that it was ridiculous. This cat's life was better than a human's. Who would believe this kind of thing? But if it could really solve the problem at home, he had to believe it. The moon in the night sky was quite bright. It would be Mid-Autumn Festival in 2 days. Jiao Wei looked up at the sky and walked towards the small restaurant. His parents would be worried if he didn't go back to the restaurant. When Zheng Tan returned to the Jiao family, he saw Jiao Yuan opening a box. Mooncakes? Looking at the calendar in the living room, he almost forgot. But unfortunately, Mid-Autumn Festival wasn't a national holiday yet. Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo were still in school. But Zheng Tan looked at the 2 boxes of mooncakes. According to Jiao Ma's style, she wouldn't buy these waste of money. She should have bought some from a cake shop. So it must have been sent by someone else. Whenever it was a holiday, the gift giving would begin. Whether it was in the government, the business world, or the workplace, there were all kinds of gift giving. Even though Mid-Autumn Festival wasn't a national holiday yet, it still gave many people the opportunity and excuse to give gifts. For example, Third Master Fang, Chairman Zhao, and the others were the targets of those people who wanted to send gifts to. The 2 boxes in front of him were sent by Zhao Le last night. There were originally 3 boxes. Jiao Pa took 1 box to the courtyard and gave some to Exian and Su Chu. As they had already eaten dinner, Jiao Ma only allowed Jiao Yuan to eat 1. Jiao Yuan could bring another 1 tomorrow morning. If he felt hungry after 2 classes, he could take it out to eat. Mum, black charcoal also wants some. How many can I give it? Jiao Yuan shouted to Jiao Ma in the room. Each of you can only eat one. Black charcoal can only eat one. Black charcoal has gained weight recently. Jiao Ma, who was busy answering the phone, said. She then closed the door and continued to make calls. Little Pomelo opened an egg yolk for Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan was eating it on the sofa, but his ears were perked up. He was listening to the movements in the bedroom. Why was it so secretive when making a phone call? Did she not want the two kids to know? Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo could not hear the sound of the phone call, but Zheng Tan could. Although it was not very clear, he could at least catch a few key words. It seemed to be related to the upcoming National Day holiday, and buying a car? Zheng Tan moved his ears and stopped eating the mooncake. He listened carefully to the sounds in the room. Unfortunately, Jiao Yuan was too talkative. Zheng Tan simply put down the mooncake and went to the door. He leaned close to the door and listened carefully. Seeing Zheng Tan's actions, the two kids who were eating mooncakes looked at each other. They put down the mooncakes in their hands and tiptoed to the door. They pressed their ears against the door to listen. Jiao Ma, who was talking on the phone, would never think that someone was eavesdropping at the door. She was still chatting happily. When the Jiao Pa came back, he saw the two kids standing on both sides of the door with their ears pressed against the door. There was also a cat below them. The cat's tail was curling from time to time, as if it was thinking about something. Seeing that the Jiao Pa came back, Jiao Yuan was not embarrassed at all. Instead, he asked the Jiao Pa excitedly, "Are we going to buy a car?" The Jiao Pa was amused. It turned out that the kid was eavesdropping because of this. "I'm thinking about it, but I haven't decided yet." Although he already had a plan, the Jiao Pa did not say too much. He did not want to disappoint the two kids if there were any changes. After all, Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo were still kids. When they heard the Jiao Pa's words, they did not think too much about it. As long as there was a possibility, it was fine. They went back to the sofa and sat down, eating their unfinished mooncakes while watching TV. After eating, take a shower and go to bed. Don't watch TV too late. The Jiao Pa said to the two kids. When he passed by Zheng Tan, he stretched out his finger and poked Zheng Tan's forehead. "You too. Go to bed early. Also, exercise more recently. Look at you. You've gained weight." Zheng Tan pulled his ears and went to little Pomelo's room to look at himself in the mirror. He didn't gain much weight. Thinking back on his life, it seemed that other than picking up little Pomelo, he only ate, slept, and watched the military training. As for food, he ate 3 meals a day with the Jiao family. He also ate some other food intermittently. Although he was a little picky, he had a wide range of food compared to other cats. Besides, he did not eat much, so there were some signs of him gaining weight. Would he become as fat as Depeng after a while? Regardless of whether he gained weight or not, Zheng Tan picked up the running exercise that he had thrown away for a long time the next day. Old Madame Zhai came back after dancing. She was still waving the bright red woolen fan in her hand. When she saw Zheng Tan trotting, she shouted, "Yo, Black Charcoal, I haven't seen you running for a long time." An old lady next to old Madame Zhai also said, "That cat looks better than before." The so-called better meant that the cat was fatter. It was just that people here felt that it was better to raise a fatter pet. If the cat was too thin, people would think that you were mistreating your pet. Just like in the courtyard in the Eastern District, Depeng was recognized as the best cat. Most people's first words when they saw Depeng were, "This cat is really well raised." Back then, Depeng's old lady was worried that the cat might have some diseases due to its fatness. She went to check on it. In the end, other than being fatter, there were no major problems. Everyone felt that it was quite strange that the cat could run and jump. No matter what, Zheng Tan decided to pick up the running exercise that he had put down for a long time. Anyway, the weather was gradually getting colder. It would not be as hot as it was in the summer. Recently, there were more people in the school square. The clubs were recruiting new members, so it was more lively. The members of the Roller Skating Association were in a formation, skating in circles around the school's main road. Some words were tied to their arms, which could be used to form publicity slogans. The equipment was also neat. When the group of people skated in front of them, it looked quite cool. It also satisfied some people's desire to show off. Therefore, many new students would go to the Roller Skating Association in the square to ask about the situation. There were also members of the Bicycle Association. A group of people rode flashy bicycles. Sometimes they held billboards, sometimes they shouted slogans, and rode around the school. In the square where the association was, there were some photos. They were all taken during the holidays when they went out to travel by bicycle. There were also some slogans such as "Ride the World" on them, which satisfied some people's desire to go out by bicycle during the National Day holiday. Sometimes you could see some students dressed up like anime characters. They were from the Anime and Manga Association. Chuhua City would sometimes hold some anime and manga fairs, and there would be cosplay. They would also participate, so every year, during the recruitment of new members in anime and manga fairs, you could see those eye-catching cosplayers on campus. Zheng Tan saw this when he was running. There were also many clubs that only advertised in the square. Zheng Tan stood in the distance and watched for a while. There were people in costumes, dancing skirts, and even people in martial arts and taekwondo costumes. Those were all very popular clubs. Zheng Tan had not participated in such activities when he was in university. At that time, he did not seem to pay attention to these things. Most of the time, he was not in school. He only learned about many activities that he would encounter in university after coming here. Zheng Tan also saw Jiao Wei. It was not that Zheng Tan's eyesight was too good. He just glanced at some of the more unpopular clubs on the periphery. There were not many people there. There was only Jiao Wei in one of the clubs. However, because of the angle, Zheng Tan could not see what club it was, and he was not very interested. After jogging for a while, when he passed by the Institute of Biological Sciences, he ran to the tree in front of Jiao Pa's office window to take a look. There was no one in the office. Xian and Su Chu were not there either. They were probably busy with experiments. Zheng Tan did not stay for long. He returned to the east courtyard, and was about to go home to sleep for a while. He did not expect to see Third Master Feng's car parked downstairs. At this moment, Third Master Feng was leaning against the car door and taking out his phone. When he saw Zheng Tan, Third Master Feng was very happy. "Hey, I was just about to call your cat father. There's no one in your house. Help me open the door." Third Master Feng put away his phone again. Zheng Tan looked at him suspiciously. Didn't Celestine and Yi Hao say that this guy was very busy every day? Why did he have time to come here now? He jumped up and swiped his card. He took the key from Depeng's house. After he came back from wandering, Zheng Tan felt that it was too troublesome to hide the key in the tree. So he hid it in a place on Depeng's balcony. Anyway, Depeng usually squatted on the balcony to look after the house. If Depeng went to visit relatives, Zheng Tan would hide the key in the tree. The Third Master Feng was not too surprised that Zheng Tan could open the door by himself. He had already known about it from Jiao Pa. When he was wandering, he even knew that this cat could turn on the hot water and use the hairdryer by himself. This time, Third Master Feng brought a few boxes of hardcover mooncakes. He was going back to Beijing for the Mid-Autumn Festival, but there were too many people who gave him gifts. He could not eat them all. After he gave some to his subordinates, Third Master Feng sent some to the Jiao family. After he sent them, he would drive back to Beijing. After the Third Master Feng put down the boxes, he called the Jiao Pa. After the call, Third Master Feng said to Zheng Tan, who was lying lazily on the sofa, "Your cat father seems to be buying a car." Although he did not say, "I heard some people talking over there." Chapter 105. After the Third Master Feng left, Zheng Tan leaned on the balcony and stared downstairs. When a car drove in, he craned his neck to take a look. When little Pomelo and the others finished school, Zheng Tan did not see the car he expected. He had no choice but to go to the affiliated to Renmin University of China to pick up the kids. At noon, the Jiao Pa had already called the people at the small restaurant to tell them that he would not be coming over for lunch. Zheng Tan guessed that the Jiao Pa was probably still busy with the car. However, it was hard for Associate Professor Jiao to go out to look for cars during working hours. He probably left the work at hand to Xian or Su Chu. Although he did not see the Jiao Pa in the morning, Zheng Tan did not go out in the afternoon. He climbed a few trees in the courtyard to play for a while. Then he found a tree and lay down on it to sleep. It was almost 5 o'clock when he finally saw the Jiao Pa come back. However, he walked into the courtyard alone. Zheng Tan looked behind the Jiaopa and did not see the car. He looked at the Jiaopa in confusion. Where was the car? Unfortunately, the Jiaopa did not answer his questions. Zheng Tan decided to eavesdrop tonight. Usually, after the two kids went to bed, the Jiaopa and Jiaoma would talk about something. After dinner, Zheng Tan accompanied the two kids to watch TV until 9 o'clock. When the two kids went to bed, he jumped out of bed and prepared to eavesdrop. The lights in little Pomelo's room were off, but little Pomelo was still awake. When she heard Zheng Tan's movements, little Pomelo took out a small flashlight from under her pillow. Black Charcoal, where are you going? Zheng Tan wagged his tail and looked at the door lock. Little Pomelo got up and opened the door for Zheng Tan in her slippers. She moved gently and tried not to make the door lock make a sound. She opened the door a small gap, just enough for Zheng Tan to go out. They had done this many times. Zheng Tan came to the bedroom door and squatted down. He tilted his head and pressed his ear against the bedroom door, while little Pomelo lay back down on the bed. 10 minutes later, Zheng Tan crawled back into bed. He was in a good mood. Jiaopa had indeed bought a car. He was going to pick it up tomorrow. There were probably still some paperwork to be done. Other than the car, Jiaopa and Jiaoma mainly talked about the National Day holiday. They had already received an invitation to Jiaopa's younger sister's 10th birthday party. The couple would bring their child to the party and drive their new car. They would also bring Zheng Tan along. In their hometown, a child's 10th birthday party was a big event, and parents paid more attention to it. Since it happened to be a holiday, Jiaopa and Jiaoma would definitely not refuse. It was a good opportunity to go back to their hometown. Other than the car, they talked about the trivial things between their relatives. Zheng Tan was not interested in listening. After he heard the news he wanted, he went back happily. However, because of this, Zheng Tan missed the key part of the Jiaopa and Jiaoma's discussion. At least for Zheng Tan, it was quite important. Many people would leave their pets at the pet center if they were going on a long trip. The National Day holiday was only a few days, and it was not a big deal to leave their pets at the pet center. Everyone did that. However, Zheng Tan was a special case. Jiaoma did not want to leave Zheng Tan alone in the pet center. She also did not trust Xiaoguo and the others to take care of it. What if it went missing? Therefore, it was better to take care of it herself. After all, her cat was very obedient. However, there was another issue that was troublesome. Jiaopa's sister lived in the city of their hometown. It was a private room with 3 floors. It was quite spacious, and there would probably be more guests. Although the banquet was in a hotel, other than the banquet, some relatives and friends would also rest at home. There were many people and there were many children. Naughty children who did not know anything and were very destructive were the nemesis of pets. Therefore, Jiaoma was a little worried that there would be a conflict. Although her cat had not scratched people, what if some naughty child annoyed her cat and got scratched? Would there be a fight? It's okay. They have a pet dog and a cat. They get along well with the children. Besides, there are adults watching over them. Our cat is smart. There won't be any conflict, Jiaopa said. I'm still worried. Let Black Charcoal follow little Pomelo. I'll just say hello to the people over there. The next day, Jiaopa finally drove the car back before dinner. It was a silver gray, very ordinary family car. It was not as impressive as Yuan Ziyi's car, nor was it as impressive as Third Master Fang's car. However, Zheng Tan and the 2 children were very happy. No matter how high-end the car was, it was still someone else's car. It was like a magnificent palace, but it was not your home. It did not feel like your home. As the boss, Yuan Ziyi definitely needed a good car to show his face. Third Master Fang was even more so. For Laps was already a low-key car among all the cars he owned. However, for the Jiao family, such an ordinary family car was enough. Zheng Tan knew that although Jiaopa had less money now, he did not have much to spend. The reason why he was in a hurry to buy a car was that it was more convenient to drive his own car when he went back to his hometown. Also, he wanted to let Jiaoma familiarize herself with the car as soon as possible. When he went abroad, Jiaoma would be able to use the car here. She would not need to ride an electric scooter to go anywhere. It was dangerous to take 2 children and a cat with her. If she drove, it would save her a lot of trouble. It was also more convenient on rainy days. If Zheng Tan was asked to evaluate this car in the past, he probably would not like it. However, Zheng Tan was very happy now. After jumping in through the window, he began to look left and right. He felt that the new car did not smell right. It was too strange. Suddenly, he remembered what Huang and the sheriff did when they marked the territory. It was impossible to mark it with urine. If that was the case, Zheng Tan would not be able to get in the car in the future. In addition to the urine mark, there was also the smell of rubbing. Cats had scent-secreting glands near their whiskers and ears. By rubbing and rubbing, they spread their smell to the surrounding objects. Therefore, Zheng Tan learned from Huang and rubbed on the car seat and other places. Then he sniffed. It did not seem to work. He rubbed again and rubbed again. People would feel more at ease in an environment with familiar smells. Even if there were always smelly socks or a bucket of unwashed clothes in the room, as long as he could tolerate it and get used to it, it would be fine. If he was suddenly put into a very clean room without any other smells, he would feel uncomfortable for a while. Not knowing the smell after smelling it for a long time, physiologically speaking, it was a type of olfactory adaptation. However, on the other hand, it also showed a philosophical problem of my territory, my smelly. Therefore, Zheng Tan rubbed on the car very intensely and felt at ease. The Jiaopa looked at his cat rubbing around in the car. He thought about it and decided to let him do as he pleased. Other than his family, no other family would let their pets rub around in a new car. The interior of the car was not decorated with anything else, so it was rather monotonous. When he bought the car, he received a pendant that was said to have been blessed. The Jiaopa always felt that it was an eyesore, so he took it off. When he went back to his hometown, he would ask the old lady to get another one done. The Jiaopa did not believe that other people would give similar things as gifts. However, after the Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo came back, the car changed. The Jiaoma also embroidered a peace pendant. Little Pomelo and Jiao Yuan also put a few dolls in the car. It looked a little livelier. After rubbing around in the car, Zheng Tan felt that it was about time, so he rolled around in the car seat before getting out. Because of the car, Zheng Tan was especially looking forward to going on a trip on the 11th. No matter where he went, it would be a new experience. Because there would be a lot of people traveling on the first day of the holiday, the Jiaopa decided to set off on the 30th of September. Because they had started preparing a few days in advance, they did not feel rushed when they set off. After the two kids finished school, the Jiaoma and Jiaopa came back. They had dinner and set off at 7 o'clock. Their destination this time was Xingyang, where their hometown was. From Chuhua City to Xingyang, it was about a 2-hour drive on the highway. The two elders had already been told that Grandpa Jiao had come from the village yesterday to clean the house in town. Although they had a house in town, the two elders of the Jiao family always liked to stay in the village. They were familiar with the place. From the east side of the village to the west side, they knew everyone there. When they played mahjong, they could be there anytime. It was not too boring. Occasionally, they would stay in town for a while and hang out with some relatives who had moved to town. They arrived at their house after 9 o'clock. The two elders were already waiting at the door with the lights on. Grandpa Jiao was quite happy to greet his grandson, whom he had not seen for a long time. However, the first thing that came out was a black cat. Why did you bring it here? Chapter 106. Even though Grandpa Jiao was a little unhappy with the fact that the Jiaopa had brought the cat with them, he didn't want to find fault with Zheng Tan since it was already late. He went back to tidy up the room with his wife. This house in town was also a private house. It wasn't an apartment building, so it was relatively free. Because of the location, it was much more spacious. No wonder Grandpa Jiao didn't want to go to Chuhua City. After tidying up 2 rooms, one for the Jiaopa and Jiao Yuan, and the other for the Jiaoma and little Pomelo, Zheng Tan thought for a while, and ignored the old sofa cushions and a simple cat bed that Grandpa Jiao had made out of paper boxes. He ran into the Jiaoma and little Pomelo's room. Because of Zheng Tan's presence, Grandpa Jiao covered the fish that he had just bought with something to prevent the cat from eating it. The next day, Grandma Jiao woke up early and went out to buy breakfast. Many of the local specialties couldn't be found in Chuhua City. Since it was rare for her son and grandson to come back, Grandma Jiao bought a lot of food. However, Zheng Tan didn't get any. During breakfast, Jiao Pa and the other three shared some for him. Grandpa Jiao stared at them. This cat is like this because you guys spoiled it. Grandma Jiao didn't say anything, but it seemed like she supported her husband's words. Jiao Pa just smiled and didn't say anything. If he said anything at this time, Grandpa Jiao would only talk more. Zheng Tan ate 2 mouthfuls and looked up at Grandpa Jiao. He wagged his tail slowly. Old man, just stare. There's nothing you can do about it. Grandpa Jiao picked 2 mouthfuls of rice noodles and put down his chopsticks. He clutched his chest and said, "My stomach hurts." Everyone was speechless. So your stomach is where your heart is. Eat your food. Why are you angry with the cat? Grandma Jiao glanced at him. Grandpa Jiao snorted and stopped talking. He picked up his chopsticks again. By the way, Mingsheng, go and see Yao Hong after breakfast. She's in the hospital, the old lady said. What's going on? Jiao Pa asked in shock. Yao Hong was Jiao Pa's cousin. Jiao Pa remembered that she was quite healthy. Ever since his cousin's husband became successful in the business world, his cousin Yao Hong also became a rich madam. She usually took good care of herself. How did she end up in the hospital? The old lady sighed. I heard that it was because of diet pills, but it's just a guess. The hospital hasn't come to a conclusion yet. We don't know what happened. They spoke in a dialect, and Zheng Tan had heard a little of it before. Although he didn't understand it completely, he could understand a part of it. Hearing the old lady's words, Zheng Tan sighed in his heart. TSK, eating diet pills can also get me into the hospital. Jiao Pa thought for a moment and nodded. I got it. But some diet pills aren't very effective. Zheng Tan looked up at the Jiao Pa. He felt that the Jiao Pa must have guessed the reason, but it wasn't appropriate to say it here. So he just answered the old lady's question briefly. The Jiao Pa's 10th birthday party was tomorrow. Today, the Jiao Pa decided to let the 2 children rest at home first. They went to the hospital to visit their cousin, and the old lady went out with them. Thus, only the 2 children, an old man, and a cat were left at home. The 2 children were watching TV. Grandpa Jiao wandered around and pulled a piece of green foxtail grass out of nowhere to disturb Zheng Tan, who was resting on the sofa. Zheng Tan didn't want to bother with the old man, but the old man was too enthusiastic. Zheng Tan grabbed the piece of green foxtail grass with his paw, tore it apart, and threw it aside. Then, he ran to the Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo and lay down between them. He didn't believe that the old man would be so bored as to bother his grandson. Grandpa Jiao looked at the 2 children and then at the cat in the middle. He snorted and said a few words to the Jiao Yuan. Then he dragged a chair over and sat there to watch cartoons with the 2 children. He was quite happy. In the afternoon, after the Jiao Pa and Jiao Ma came back, they were talking in the room. Zheng Tan pricked up his ears and eavesdropped. It's probably because of the weight loss medicine. I've asked around and confirmed that Sister Hong bought the famous weight loss medicine that's currently very popular. As for that medicine, I've heard from the medical school that the main ingredient in it is sibutramine hydrochloride. There has always been a controversy abroad. Moreover, 2 years ago, the European side launched a Scout sibutramine cardiovascular endpoint trial project. The project is still ongoing, but I've heard that there are deaths and cardiovascular events. The official conclusion doesn't seem to be out yet, so we'll have to wait for a few years. However, I think that warnings will start to come out next year. As for the situation in China, I'm not sure. Hong Jie still refuses to admit it. Jiao Ma sighed. Before this, Hong Jie's usual symptoms were similar to the side effects of the pills. She wants to save face and refuses to admit it. However, she should have listened to what I said to her today. She should be more careful in the coming days. Hey, tell me more about the famous diet pills. How is the research going abroad? Jiao Ma was quite interested in this. Women always want to maintain a good figure. However, as they get older, they tend to put on weight easily, especially Jiao Pa's cousin. After she became successful, she had to attend more social events. It was easy for her to put on weight. In order not to lose face, she took the diet pills hard. Zheng Tan listened to the Jiao Pa and Jiao Ma's conversation. Zheng Tan remembered that the diet pills they were talking about were really popular for a long time. Many celebrities were endorsing the pills. However, after a few years, he didn't hear about it anymore. He didn't know what happened. Now, it seems that the pills were banned just like what Jiaopa had predicted. Zheng Tan listened for a while with the mentality of listening to a story and gossip. He was quite interested in this. However, Zheng Tan's good mood was hit to the bottom at night. After listening to Jiao Ma's story again, Zheng Tan was sure that disaster was coming for him. Naughty kids. He would have to face a bunch of naughty kids tomorrow. What if he suddenly didn't want to go? However, the family members were all out. Jiao Ma was probably worried about leaving Zheng Tan alone in the house. She had prepared the bag and was just waiting for Zheng Tan tomorrow. At night, she even let Zheng Tan take a good bath, brush his fur, and blow-dry his fur. After he was clean, she put the cat tag on him. However, when he thought about what he had to face, Zheng Tan couldn't feel happy. What the F***CK? On October 2nd, the old man and the old lady wore new clothes. Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo were dressed up by Jiao Ma. Besides celebrating the birthday of the birthday girl, everyone had to talk about their children. This was the rule of society. When they were young, they would compare their grades. When they grew up, they would compare their family background. When they got married, they would compare their children. After that, it was a new cycle. Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo were still young and didn't understand. However, Jiao Pa and Jiao Ma were already mentally prepared. Therefore, they bought new clothes for the two children in advance and dressed them up appropriately. They even prepared some speeches for the social events. As for Zheng Tan, he was squatting inside the bag that Mama Jiao was carrying. His ears were pulled back into the shape of an airplane, and his face was filled with displeasure. At this time, the space in the car was much smaller. Jiao Ma sat in the front passenger seat. The old couple and Jiao Yuan sat in the back seat. Little Pomelo was in the old lady's arms. Zheng Tan seemed a little nervous when he saw little Pomelo's expression. Well, they were not familiar with each other. If they were from the Gu family, they would know a few people. However, now they were all from the Jiao family. However, this also saved them a lot of trouble. Many people from the Gu family knew that little Pomelo was thrown back to China by her mother. After that, she was alone abroad and didn't care about the children. Because of this, those aunties would nag for a long time. Therefore, it was good that they didn't meet the Gu family. More than 20 minutes later, the Jiao Pa's car stopped in front of a 3-story residential house. There were already several cars parked there. There were many people around. Jiao Ma got out of the car first with the two children. The Jiao Pa parked the car in a hotel not far away. Anyway, the birthday party would be held there. The parking lot there was big, and it was not as crowded as here. Moreover, when there were more children, accidents like car accidents often happened. Therefore, in order to avoid damage the new car, the Jiao Pa drove it away. Jiao Ma carried her bag in one hand, and held little Pomelo's hand in the other. As for Jiao Yuan, he knew many people around. Even if they hadn't seen each other for more than a year, they would be familiar with each other after playing with each other for a while. They were all teenagers. The Jiao Ma couldn't keep an eye on him all the time. Anyway, the Jiao Yuan didn't like to play with those children in kindergarten. Little Pomelo was a little reserved. She pursed her lips and didn't talk much. When the Jiao Ma greeted others, she would occasionally ask her to greet others. The traditional greeting was too complicated. Little Pomelo probably couldn't understand it. Little Pomelo also didn't understand a lot of the dialects here. She had been exposed to Mandarin and English since she was young. However, with the Jiao Ma by her side, she didn't have to worry too much. Hey, why did you bring the cat here? An auntie looked at Zheng Tan in the Jiao Ma's bag and laughed. This is our family's treasure. We don't feel safe leaving it in Chuhua City, so we brought it here. It is very obedient and won't run around. The Jiao Ma said to the person. There was a 7 or 8-year-old child standing next to the auntie. He looked at the cat's head in the bag and bit his finger. Then he slowly moved over and reached out his hand to pull Zheng Tan's beard. Zheng Tan retracted his head back into the bag. After going upstairs, the Jiao Ma came to a room. There were some children in the room. Most of them were girls. The boys were running around outside and couldn't stay idle. After the Jiao Ma introduced the children, she asked little Pomelo to stay here and watch some DVDs with the children. The Jiao Ma still had to greet some people. There was a girl in her teens. She was probably in junior high school. She was responsible for taking care of the children. She smiled and gave little Pomelo a cushion for her to sit on. She also handed her a glass of juice. The floor of the room was covered with foam mats. The others took the mats and sat directly on the floor. Next to them, there was a little kid crawling on the foam mats. He probably didn't know how to walk yet, but he crawled with strength. Moreover, he was drooling as he crawled. Zheng Tan came out of the bag and sat next to little Pomelo. At first, a few children came over to disturb Zheng Tan, but gradually, everyone went to watch the DVDs. Zheng Tan was closing his eyes and taking a nap when he suddenly felt a smell of milk approaching. He opened his eyes and saw the little kid sitting and staring at him. He even called out, "Ah," twice. His words were very vague, so Zheng Tan couldn't make out what he was saying. "On my ass." Zheng Tan pulled his ear. "Ka ka ka." The little kid laughed a few times and began to speak vaguely again. He was laughing and drooling as he crawled over. Seeing the little kid crawling over, Zheng Tan felt a headache. He got up and walked away. The little kid was addicted to following him. He was crawling with vigor. Chapter 107. There was a window next to the cabinet. Zheng Tan looked out from the window and saw Jiao Yuan and a few other kids around his age playing and running around. Looking at the room, the contrast was stark. It had to be said that girls were quieter than boys. At least the girls in this room were quite quiet. As for the only boy, who was not even a year old, Zheng Tan directly ignored him and let him drool and mumble to himself. But not long after, an old lady came in and took the little boy away. She was probably his grandmother. Without the noise of the little boy, Zheng Tan did not jump down from the cabinet. He just squatted on the cabinet and hoped that time would pass faster. Little Pomelo was no longer worried when she saw Zheng Tan squatting on top of the cupboard. She started to watch the rented cartoon with the other girls. Those were the kind that girls liked to watch. Zheng Tan could not focus on it and could only squat on the cabinet and take a nap. According to the customs of this place, there were 2 banquets for the 10th birthday, one in the afternoon and one in the evening. Actually, it was the 10th birthday banquet. According to the time of birth, it was only 9 years old. But this was the custom. Zheng Tan was too lazy to bother about it. Now he was thinking little Pomelo seemed to be almost 9 years old. When the time came, would there be a 10th birthday banquet in Chuhua City? But little Pomelo's irresponsible mother was always abroad. And, when the time came, he would go to 3rd Master Feng's Shaoguang Hotel to celebrate little Pomelo's birthday. Finally, at noon, the Jiao Ma came to take little Pomelo away. Zheng Tan jumped back into the bag and was carried away by the Jiao Ma. The hotel was not far away. The group walked directly there. This time, Zheng Tan didn't enter the hotel. He stayed in the Jiao Pa's car. Little Pomelo wanted to take Zheng Tan to the hotel, but when the Jiao Pa asked Zheng Tan to choose, Zheng Tan jumped into the car. He looked around and saw that there were a lot of children going in with the Jiao Yuan. He did not want to squeeze in there. At that time, there would be a lot of people at the table, and there would be a lot of naughty children around. They would be surrounded by people they did not know. It was better to wait until the Jiao Pa and the others had eaten before bringing food over. Although it was a little boring to stay in the car, it was still better than going over there to face the brats and all kinds of strangers. It was too noisy there. When he woke up, the Jiao Pa had already brought a bowl over. After delivering the food, the Jiao Pa immediately turned back. There were still people who wanted to talk to him. Zheng Tan was not used to the hotel's food. Fortunately, it was still warm, as if it had just been reheated. He forced himself to eat to fill his stomach. When he heard that the children would be going to the amusement park later, Zheng Tan decided to stay in the car. Anyway, with the current amusement facilities and the condition of this small place, there was probably nothing fun to do. He was an adult and had no interest in playing with the children. After eating, Zheng Tan stayed in the back seat for a while. He felt a little bored and wanted to stretch his body. He put his paws on the car window and stretched. When he stretched halfway and looked out the window, he saw a large group of naughty children coming out of the hotel entrance. They were walking towards him. There were boys and girls, ranging from 3-year-olds to children about the same age as the Jiao Yuan. A group of people were walking towards him. A few of the children were holding balloons in their hands. They used the balloons to hit their parents who were hugging them. The parents were happy and smiled as they put their faces forward for the balloons to hit. Zheng Tan felt a pain in his bones. When he saw these naughty children, he felt that his cat life was bleak. Because there were too many children going to the amusement park, everyone split up. Those who had cars each took a few children. In the end, the extra children were all chartered to go to the amusement park. As a result, there were 2 children in the Jiao Pa's car that he did not know. One of them sat in the front passenger seat. Jiao Ma sat in the back with little Pomelo in her arms. There was also Jiao Yuan, and another boy around 10 years old that Zheng Tan did not know. The child was also holding a balloon in his hand. When he saw Zheng Tan, he hit Zheng Tan with the balloon. No matter how Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo protested, and no matter what Jiao Ma said, he did not know his place. Zheng Tan could not stand it anymore. He raised his paw and broke the balloon. In the end, it was the Jiao Pa who spoke that the child calmed down for a while. However, it was only for a while. When he sat there, his eyes were still looking at Zheng Tan. Look at the F***ck. Zheng Tan was very unhappy. The amusement park in this city was about a 20-minute drive from here. Every 5 minutes, the Jiao Pa had to reprimand the child. Otherwise, the child would spin around like a spinning top. He even reached out to poke Zheng Tan, and tried to pull Zheng Tan's tail. When he failed, he tried to pull his ears and beard. However, he was slapped away by Zheng Tan. Zhang Zian could not avoid it either. The car was so small. The naughty child was poking at him even though there was a person between them. Zheng Tan could not run in front and interfere with the Jiao Pa's driving. Besides, there was another child in front. Who knew if the one in front would be more difficult to deal with? The Jiao Yuan wanted to beat the child, but he was stopped by the Jiao Ma. If he really beat the child until he cried, they would quarrel again. However, the child was really disobedient. Therefore, the Jiao Pa had to warn him every few minutes. Other than the Jiao Pa, the child did not listen to anyone. He probably knew that no one else would dare to do anything to him. Zheng Tan suddenly missed Chuhua City. He really wished that time would pass faster. Finally, when they arrived at the amusement park, the naughty child's attention was diverted. He opened the car door and rushed out. Black Charcoal, do you want to come with us? The Jiao Pa asked after parking the car in the parking lot. Zheng Tan lay on the back seat and did not move. He lowered his ears and ignored Zhang Zian. Okay, you stay here. There is a cat litter box here. If you need to pee, you can use it. The Jiao Pa dragged out a simple cat litter box the size of a shoebox and put it on the ground. Then he left. There was water and some snacks in the car. Now there was even a toilet. The Jiao Pa was not afraid that something would happen to Zheng Tan. The car window was closed, but not tightly. There was a small gap. There was no need to worry that someone would break into the car. After all, Zheng Tan was guarding the car. Zheng Tan looked out of the car window. The facilities in the amusement park were as Zheng Tan imagined. They were simple and monotonous. There was no need to think about roller coasters. However, there were similar rides that were enough to entertain the child. Zheng Tan was bored lying on the car seat. He could not sleep. He had not gone out for 2 days. This place was too strange. Zheng Tan was not familiar with the surroundings. Even if he wanted to go out for a walk, the Jiao Pa would not allow him to. Therefore, he simply did simple exercises like eating, and sleeping. Unable to sleep, Zheng Tan stood up and looked at the scenery outside the car window. There were no tall buildings around the amusement park. This small city was not developed. Compared to Chuhua City, it was far behind, not to mention Nanxing City, which was further south. This was the so-called urban area. The Jiao Pa's hometown was still in the countryside. According to the Jiao Pa's plan, he was going there to take a look in November. However, he did not know the exact date. However, for Zheng Tan, it was fine as long as he did not have to face those naughty children. While thinking, Zheng Tan saw a woman in her 40s pass by the car window with a child in her arms. Her footsteps were hurried. Zheng Tan noticed her not because of the person, but because of the child in her arms. Although the child was covered with a coat, because of the close distance, the woman looked back when she passed by, and the coat slipped down, allowing Zheng Tan to see the child's face. Wasn't this the little kid who followed him in the morning? Zheng Tan still remembered the clothes with the little bear pattern. However, the little kid seemed to be in a deep sleep with his eyes closed. After the woman looked back, she pulled the coat that slipped down and covered the child again. Then, she carried the child and walked forward. Not far ahead, there was a motorbike. A man wearing sunglasses rode on it and said something to the woman. Then he raised his hand and lifted the coat that covered the little kid to take a look. Zheng Tan felt that this person was checking if the little kid had a little dick. Then, the man in sunglasses left with the woman. Zheng Tan did not know who the child was, nor did he know who the Paws relatives were. Originally, he did not want to pay attention to it. Besides, even if he was a little suspicious, he could not go out now. However, in less than 5 minutes, people ran out of the amusement park. The few adults who were with the Jiaopa earlier looked anxious and asked the people around them. Zheng Tan suddenly felt that something was wrong. After thinking about it, there were indeed many suspicious points. Zheng Tan had never encountered such a thing. In the past, he had only heard of people using food or toys to trick children. However, the little kid was not even 1 year old and could not even walk. How could the child be stolen just like that? Weren't there many people around watching? The child's grandmother was also with them. How could the child be stolen? 10 minutes later, the Jiaopa and Jiaoma came out. They were in a bad mood. The Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo were tactful and did not say anything. Now each family had brought their own children. This time, there were 2 children who came to take the bus. However, these 2 children were much more obedient and quiet. One of them even seemed to have cried. The atmosphere in the car was completely different from when they came. The silence in the car was depressing. The Jiao Yuan opened his mouth a few times, but in the end he did not ask anything. The Jiaopa sent the child back to his sister's house. Then he brought the Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo back to the house in town. The old man and old lady did not come back. After sending the Jiao Ma and the 2 children back, the Jiaopa made a few calls and hurried out. Before the Jiaopa left, Zheng Tan overheard the conversation between the Jiaopa and the Jiaoma in the room. Usually human traffickers would cheat in A, hide in B, and sell in C. If they did not find the child as soon as possible, the traffickers would probably kidnap the child elsewhere. That would make it even harder to find the child. Therefore, the Jiaopa and the others were seizing the time to look for the child. The child was the second child of the Jiaopa's cousin. Their first child was a girl. It was not easy for them to have a son, and they usually treasured him. But this time, the child's father was busy with business, and his mother was hospitalized. They did not have time to take care of the child. There was a nanny at home, but when they went out, the child's grandmother would take care of the child. Originally, the old woman just wanted to take the child out to play. She did not expect that something like this would happen. Now everyone was going crazy. Those who had connections were looking for connections, and those who had channels were looking for channels. The Jiaopa did not have much time. In this small city that had not yet developed, there were not many places with surveillance cameras. It was not easy to find the child. Zheng Tan remembered his experience of being kidnapped by a cat trafficker. He felt that the child was quite pitiful. The child did not know anything, and was not like Zheng Tan who could save himself. Moreover, he was probably drugged. Just like those pet cats, no matter how expensive they were only worth a few dozen yuan if they were made into dishes. Zheng Tan had heard that kidnapped children were sold cheaply for a few thousand yuan. They were treated like treasures at home. In the hands of the traffickers, they were only worth that much. Chapter 108. That night, the Jiaopa came back very late, and the 2 old people were also brought back by the Jiaopa. Compared to their energetic state in the morning, the 2 old people were not in good spirits. If not for the fact that they were usually healthy, Zheng Tan suspected that they would have collapsed. After all, no family would have a good time if something like this happened. Also, based on the 2 old people's experience, they probably knew what would happen to the child if he fell into the hands of the human traffickers. That night, many people were destined to lose sleep. Not only did they lose sleep, but the adults were also discussing the matter. At 2 o'clock in the morning, there were still calls to the Jiaopa to ask about the situation. Zheng Tan did not sleep. He listened to their conversation outside the room, as well as the conversation between the 2 old people. In the past, Zheng Tan did not know much about this. All he had experienced was cat trafficking. But after all, humans were different from cats. Since the child disappeared, the child's father had put down his work and contacted some people to publish a reward notice, which was widely posted in the surrounding provinces and cities. The child's mother had originally been prepared to be discharged, but she was agitated and stayed in the hospital. Child trafficking had been going on for a long time, and such incidents were increasing in the country every year. Some criminal gangs had also begun to organize, and the division of labor was clear. It was difficult to rely on the police in one place to investigate. Moreover, the information they had was limited. A group of people wanted to do it, but they were powerless. However, even if there were not many clues, they still had to look. They had contacted all the people they needed to contact. One more channel, one more hope. At 4 o'clock in the morning, there was another call. The Jiaopa was afraid that it would be inconvenient if his phone ran out of battery, so he had left his phone and landline number with some people. In the quiet night, the landline phone rang, and people who had just calmed down continued to feel anxious. Many people said that no news was good news. At least it meant that the child was fine. This saying was somewhat self-deceiving. Just like in the current situation, people still hope for some news. Hearing the phone ring, both the elderly and the children pricked up their ears. The Jiaopa picked up the phone and said a few words. His face was pale. "What's wrong?" The old man put on his coat and walked over. His steps were a little hurried, and he almost tripped over the low stool on the ground. "Nothing, I'm going out for a bit." The Jiaopa hung up the phone and answered. "Bullshit." Grandpa Jiao ignored the low stool he kicked and walked over. He pointed at the Jiaopa and said, "I may be old, but I'm not stupid. I don't have Alzheimer's. Don't try to fool me." Grandpa Sheng's voice was a little loud. He was too agitated and couldn't control his emotions well. Jiaoma and Grandma Sheng also came over. The Jiaopa gestured to the Jiaoma to take care of the children. The Jiaoma hesitated, sighed and turned to leave. "Old woman, you should rest too," Grandpa Jiao said to his grandmother. Grandpa Sheng always felt that when something happened and there was pressure, the man had to bear it. Even if what was about to happen was cruel, he had to face it. He couldn't let the woman bear it. Grandma Sheng also knew Grandpa Jiao's temper. Even if something really happened, they wouldn't say it now. With reddened eyes, the old lady wiped the corners of her eyes and shuffled her feet towards the bedroom. Zheng Tan stood at the door. Since no one was talking about him, he could eavesdrop. "Tell me, why did they call?" Grandpa Jiao sat down on the edge of the bed. He was no longer as imposing as before. "They found an abandoned baby on the bridge. They asked me to go take a look," Jiaopa said. Grandpa Jiao's hand trembled. Even though he didn't say the whole thing, he understood what he was implying. Since the people on the bridge asked the Jiaopa to go take a look, it couldn't be a baby girl. In this place, boys were still very precious. Abandoned babies were rare. Since it was abandoned on the bridge at such a time, the chances of the boy being alive was probably not high. Now, Grandpa Jiao's voice trembled. Although he was not his biological grandson, the relationship between relatives was not bad. During the holidays, Yao Hong and her husband would often send gifts to the old master. That little brat was also very popular with the old master. Now that something like this had happened, how could the old master not feel distressed? "I'm not sure yet. I'm just going to take a look. I didn't tell Hong Jie and the others about this." "Okay, I'll go with you." Grandpa Sheng didn't wait for Jiaopa's objection and said, "My old face is still useful." After all, he was born and raised in this place. He knew some of the older generation. Sometimes, Grandpa Jiao's presence was more useful than Jiaopa's words. Jiaopa and Grandpa Jiao went out at around 4 o'clock. The rest of the family didn't feel sleepy. When Jiaoma came back with breakfast, Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo were sitting at the dining table, yawning nonstop. Obviously, they didn't sleep well the whole night. Zheng Tan's mood was also affected. He didn't have a good appetite and didn't finish his breakfast, which was rare. Jiaoma didn't say anything. She just sighed. Grandma Sheng wanted to go out for a walk after breakfast. She said it was too stuffy in the house. Mama Jiao was worried. She was afraid that the old lady's bad mood would affect her health. As she got older, she had a lot of diseases such as high blood pressure and heart disease. She had to pay more attention to them. Now the old lady's condition was obviously much worse. If she accidentally fell outside, it would be a big problem. However, Jiaoma had to take care of the 2 children at home. She couldn't leave. After thinking for a while, Jiaoma's eyes finally landed on Zheng Tan, who was wandering around the gate. Black charcoal, do you want to go out? Jiaoma asked. Zheng Tan wagged his tail and jumped up to open the door. He walked to the door and turned to look at Jiaoma. His intention was clear. Oh, you really know how to open the door. Grandma Sheng's attention was diverted. Yeah, I always open the door at home. I don't know how to do it, Jiaoma said. Grandma Sheng thought that Zhang Zian opened the door by pulling the lock from the inside. She didn't think that Zhang Zian could open the door with a key. Besides, there weren't many cats that knew how to open the door. However, there was a cat that knew how to open the door. Therefore, Grandma Sheng didn't think that there was anything strange about Zheng Tan. Mom, let Black Charcoal go out with you. Let him relax. When he was in Chuhua, he often went to the school. This time he must be bored out of his mind, Jiaoma said. Grandma Sheng nodded at Jiaoma's words. He won't run around, right? Do you want me to keep him on a leash? No, Black Charcoal is very obedient, Jiaoma quickly said. She didn't have the heart to put a leash on her cat. Zheng Tan listened to Jiaoma and Grandma Sheng. He pretended to be very obedient. He really did want to go out and get some fresh air. The atmosphere tonight was too heavy. It was a bit depressing and uncomfortable. It was better to go out for a walk. Seeing Grandma Sheng go out, Zheng Tan followed her. He walked beside Grandma Sheng. He didn't run far and he maintained the same speed as Grandma Sheng. Jiaoma stood at the door and watched for a while. When Grandma Sheng and Zheng Tan were far away, she went back into the house and closed the door. Zheng Tan walked with Grandma Sheng while paying attention to the scenery around him. He had been here for 2 days, but he hadn't properly observed the terrain here. They were surrounded by private residential areas. After walking for more than 100 meters, they came out of the alley. Outside was the street. It was more lively there. Although this area wasn't the center of the city, there were signs that a new district was going to be built. The old factories had been knocked down and were preparing to build commercial buildings. Some areas had been fenced off. When Grandma Sheng walked out of the alley, she suddenly remembered that a cat was following her. She looked to the side and saw that her son's black cat was following her closely. It didn't go anywhere else. It was indifferent when some dogs barked at it. Grandma Sheng was satisfied. No wonder her son spoiled the cat so much. It was really obedient. Grandma Sheng planned to walk along the street for a while after leaving the alley. Zheng Tan didn't care. He wouldn't get lost if he followed Grandma Sheng. As they walked, they passed by a small store. Grandma Sheng went to buy some fruit candies. She wanted to bring them back for Jiao Yuan and the others. Are you taking your cat out for a walk? The shop owner looked curiously at the black cat standing by the old lady's feet. Grandma Sheng forced a smile. Yes, it's my son's cat. He's accompanying me for a walk. The small store owner didn't say much. He weighed the candies and gave Grandma Sheng the change. Grandma Sheng took the fruit candies and walked back with Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan was about to follow when he suddenly saw a familiar figure. A small 3-wheeled motorcycle slowly drove down the street and stopped by the side of the road. The driver got out and walked to the small store to buy cigarettes. Passenger tricycles like this could be seen in many places in the city. They were much cheaper than taxis. Many people would choose to ride them to save money. Zheng Tan looked at the driver. He wasn't wearing sunglasses, and his clothes were different. However, Zheng Tan felt that this person was very similar to the motorcyclist from yesterday. Black Charcoal, let's go back. Grandma Sheng saw that the cat stopped and didn't follow, so she called out to it. Zheng Tan looked back at Grandma Sheng and continued to stare at the 3-wheeled motorcycle driver, who was walking back after buying cigarettes. His gaze landed on the driver's gloves. They were black leather gloves, similar to the motorcyclist from yesterday. When the motorcyclist got on the 3-wheeled motorcycle and shrugged, Zheng Tan was even more certain. The motorcyclist from yesterday also shrugged before he started driving. It was probably a personal habit. Anyway, Zheng Tan didn't see Celestine shrugging when he was riding a motorcycle. Grandma Sheng saw that Zheng Tan didn't pay attention to her. She called out again, but the cat ran away directly. Black charcoal. Come back quickly. Grandma Sheng was anxious. She knew that her son's family treasured this cat. If they lost it, the two children would definitely cry when they got back. Didn't they say that cats don't run around? What was going on now? Unfortunately, Grandma Sheng's legs weren't strong enough. After running for 2 steps, she stopped to catch her breath. She was still carrying a bag of things in her hand. The shop owner sat in the shop and watched the black cat run away without caring about Grandma Sheng's calls. He shook his head and whispered, "It's better to bring the dog out for a walk. The cat won't follow you obediently." Zheng Tan kept running forward. The 3-wheeled motorcycle had already started moving. However, due to the construction in front, there were some small stones on the road. The 3-wheeled motorcycle didn't go very fast. When the motorcycle turned a corner, Zheng Tan jumped in through the open window. The driver only felt the motorcycle shake a little. He looked in the rearview mirror and didn't find anything unusual. He attributed the cause to the stones on the road. He cursed, F***ck the road, and continued to drive the 3-wheeled motorcycle away. Because there were many construction sites there, the surrounding area was surrounded. It also obstructed some people's view. Plus, the 3-wheeled motorcycle just happened to turn a corner, so no one saw Zheng Tan jump into the 3-wheeled motorcycle. Zheng Tan was afraid that other passengers would come on the motorcycle. If that happened, even if he hid under the seat, the passengers would be able to see him as long as they looked down. Fortunately, the driver didn't seem to have any intention of picking up passengers. He just kept driving. Zheng Tan looked out from the gap in the curtain. The road behind was a little off. The surroundings seemed to have been planned. There were many old buildings with the word demolished painted on them, but no construction had started. After driving for a while, Zheng Tan suddenly thought, what if I got the wrong person? Chapter 109. When the old lady returned home, the Jiao Pa and Grandpa Jiao were already home. Both of them were not in good spirits. After confirming that the baby boy at the bridge was not a little kid, the father and son went to look for a few more people. Then they went to the hospital to comfort Yao Hong. They had just returned home. With empty stomachs, the father and son had not eaten breakfast. The Jiao Ma was busy in the kitchen. The old lady originally wanted to talk about Zheng Tan, but when she saw the Grandpa Jiao, she asked about the child first. When she found out, she could only sigh. She really did not know what to say at this time. Little Pomelo ran out the moment the old lady entered the house. Then, she kept staring at the door, but did not see the cat. But the adults were talking, and she could not interrupt. The Jiao Yuan took the remote control and changed a few channels. He was not in the mood to watch TV, so he lay on the sofa and prepared to sleep. When the Jiao Yuan was about to fall asleep, little Pomelo poked him. "Brother, black charcoal is not back." Jiao Yuan shuddered and all his sleepiness was gone. He looked around and really didn't see his black cat. "Grandma, where is black charcoal?" the Jiao Yuan asked. The old lady slapped her thigh. She had almost forgotten about the child when they talked about it. She quickly told them what happened outside. "Black charcoal ran away?" The Jiao Yuan jumped off the sofa in disbelief. "Black charcoal would not run away," little Pomelo said. The Jiao Pa stopped the two children as they were about to go out. He asked the old lady, "Who do you think black charcoal was looking at?" The old lady thought for a while with a guilty expression. "Someone who went to the convenience store to buy something." The Jiao Pa asked a few more questions. The old lady thought for a while and answered them one by one. The Jiao Pa went back to his room and called someone. When he came out, he asked the Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo to stay at home. What happened? Grandpa Jiao stopped the Jiao Pa. The old man was very curious. If the Jiao Pa did not finish the story, he would feel uncomfortable. "I've asked around." After the middle-aged woman who carried Mao Mao away left the amusement park, she walked past the parking lot. "My car was parked there, so she should have passed by my car." According to the surrounding witnesses, the place where the motorbike picked up the person was also nearby. At that time, black charcoal was in the car. It must have seen something. Otherwise, it wouldn't have run around. The person who went to the convenience store to buy things is very suspicious. I'll go to the convenience store and ask about the situation first. The Mau Mau that the Jiaopa mentioned was the child's nickname. Being able to get some useful information, the Jiaopa was reinvigorated. He picked up his phone and went out. No matter how the Jiaopa and the police investigation went, Zheng Tan, who was in the little three-wheeled motorcycle, felt that he had been too impulsive. He had not been fully sure yet, but he had already jumped in. There was no turning back now. He did not know where the car would go. When the car reached the suburbs, there were some houses. However, these houses did not look shabby. They were all 2 or 3 stories high. The little three-wheeled motorcycle drove along a dirt road and stopped in front of a house. After the three-wheeled motorcycle stopped, the driver did not look at the seats inside. He took out his keys and opened the door. Zheng Tan looked around through the gap in the curtains. When he saw that there was no one around, he lifted the curtains and jumped out. He hid behind a tree. There were a lot of weeds around here. It was very suitable for hiding. Zheng Tan looked at the 2-story building with white tiles in front of him. It was similar to the houses around it. There was nothing special about it. However, the windows and doors were tightly shut. The windows on the 2nd floor were one-way glass. It was impossible to see what was inside from the outside. Zheng Tan hid in the grass behind the tree for a while. In the end, he found a tree and jumped up. He lay on a branch and looked at the building through the gaps in the leaves. The surroundings were very quiet. There were not many residents in the area. Occasionally, he saw a few people loitering outside. While Zheng Tan was observing the small building, she learned from the conversations of the passers-by that this area was going to undergo urban development. Those who had land had received quite a sum of compensation and were preparing to move away. Some spent their days looking for a place to live, while others decided to move to other places. This was why there were not many people around. Just as Zheng Tan was about to fall asleep, the window on the 2nd floor of the building was pulled open. A middle-aged woman was splashing water outside. It was that person. Zheng Tan was shocked. He felt that this trip was worth it. After the middle-aged woman finished splashing water, she closed the window again. Zheng Tan walked around the 2-story building. It was really difficult to find a way in. This building did not have a backyard. He could not climb over the wall. The windows on the 1st floor were also tightly shut. The only 2 windows that were open were installed with anti-theft nets. Zheng Tan could not squeeze in at all. Thus, he could only enter from the 2nd floor. It would be better if he had a phone. He could directly send an anonymous message to the Jiaopa. Unfortunately, he could not find a phone nearby. If he called Zheng Tan, he could not speak. He could not tell others the address. It was better to do it himself. At least, he had to make sure that the little brat was still here. When Zheng Tan walked around the 2-story building, he did not hear the cries of the child. He could not even hear people talking. He originally wanted to wait until nighttime. However, Zheng Tan heard from the Jiaopa and the others that the longer he waited, the more dangerous it would be. It was better to act early. He visually estimated the height of the 2nd floor. The front of the building was covered with white tiles. The sides and the back of the building were not covered with tiles. The walls were rough and uneven. If he really wanted to climb, he could do it. The windows on the side of the 2nd floor were tightly shut. There was an open window at the back. It was just an ordinary window. When there was no one around, Zheng Tan tested the wall. After making sure that his claws could use the rough surface of the wall to climb up, he began to move. Zheng Tan felt that he was now like Spider-Man, walking along the wall. However, if the wall was smooth, it would be more difficult. When he came to the open window at the back, Zheng Tan listened to the movements inside. After making sure that there was no one around the window, he climbed in through the small window. It looked like a utility room. There were a few cardboard boxes. It seemed that no one had cleaned it for a while. There was a layer of dust on the cardboard boxes. The door was closed, but the good thing was that the door lock seemed to be broken. It was only closed, and Zheng Tan could open it slightly with her claws. Carefully squeezing out through the crack in the door, Zheng Tan listened. He did not hear anyone around. He went to the room in front. It was not big. There was only one bed. There were a few pieces of clothes that belonged to a middle-aged woman on the bed. There were no baby products. Strange. Where was she? The three-wheeled motorcycle driver had come in. The middle-aged woman must be here too. However, why was there no movement? After looking around, there was a room on the second floor that was tightly shut. Zheng Tan put his ear to the door and vaguely heard a sound. There was soundproofing inside. Feeling the vibration approaching, Zheng Tan quickly rushed under the bed in the room in front. The next moment, the tightly shut door opened. Zheng Tan heard a conversation inside. There was a woman's voice and two men's voices. The woman was definitely the middle-aged woman. One of the men was the three-wheeled motorcycle driver, and the other sounded slightly older. Zheng Tan listened to them talk about big goods, little goods, and so on. They also talked about treating illnesses. The middle-aged woman was complaining about something, and the three of them were arguing. After listening for a long time, Zheng Tan realized that the so-called big goods were actually boys and little goods were girls. This should be a jargon. However, when he heard people being compared to goods, Zheng Tan felt very uncomfortable. Was human life so cheap? They originally had 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl. However, one of the boys was sick when they were shipped here. They did not want to treat the boy's illness. Other than the problem of money, they did not want to be too troublesome and expose themselves. Therefore, they just threw the boy on the bridge. Zheng Tan guessed that it was probably the baby that Jiao Pa and Grandpa Jiao rushed over to see at 4 o'clock in the morning. There was also a girl who seemed to have been fed an overdose of sleeping pills. She was a little slow and probably stupid. Zheng Tan thought of those people who use tranquilizer guns to shoot dogs. They did not care about the dose that different dogs could withstand. They just shot them directly and many dogs would die immediately. As for humans, there was also a great risk, especially for children. The slightest carelessness was related to life. Even if the child was lucky, the child's brain development and intelligence would be seriously damaged. Not to mention such a small baby. The 3 of them were arguing about these 2 things. The man with the old voice said that he had already contacted someone to pick up the goods. However, there were 2 problems in a row. It was the other 2 people's carelessness. It was their fault and they lost 40,000 yuan. Zheng Tan did not know how they contacted the buyer. The price for a boy was 30,000 yuan, and the price for a girl was 10,000 yuan. The person said that this was a rare high price, but it was ruined. Now there was only a boy left. Otherwise, they could have earned another 40,000 yuan. $40,000 for 2 lives, and they were children who couldn't even speak. Zheng Tan felt that these people were king inhumane. However, at the same time, Zheng Tan was also glad. The remaining boy was probably the Mao little brat that the Jiao Pa and the others were anxiously looking for. The old man's very good-looking baby boy that was just brought over yesterday could indeed match Mao. Since he had found the place and the person, how could he contact the Jiao Pa and the others? Zheng Tan was troubled. The door of the room was tightly shut. The middle-aged woman and the 3-wheeled motorcycle driver came out. The old man was still inside. He did not know what he was doing. Perhaps he was contacting the buyer or negotiating the price. The 3-wheeled motorcycle driver smoked a cigarette and went downstairs. The middle-aged woman came into the room, opened the drawer, and took out a box. Zheng Tan heard the sound and guessed that it was jewelry. After a while, when the middle-aged woman left and went downstairs, Zheng Tan listened to the movements around him. He came out from under the bed and looked at the layout of the room again. It would be difficult for him to deal with 3 people alone. Moreover, these 3 people were obviously not good people. He could not be impulsive. After rummaging through the drawer and the small bag hanging at the side, Zheng Tan found a box of medicine. Zheng Tan shook his beard and narrowed his eyes. Diet medicine? Looking at the teapot on the side, Zheng Tan took out the medicine. Chapter 110. Zheng Tan had to thank Little Wimp's mother. Otherwise, he wouldn't have known the effects of this medicine. When the Jiao Pa and Jiao Ma were talking, Zheng Tan heard them clearly. Moreover, they were talking about this brand of weight loss medicine. The medicine was a capsule. Zheng Tan casually found a piece of paper and hid under the bed to open the medicine. It was impossible to throw the whole capsule into the teapot, so Zheng Tan had to get the powder out of the capsule. Cat claws weren't easy to do, but after all, he had used them many times, so they were much more flexible. It was just opening the capsule, so it wasn't too troublesome. After getting the white powder out of the capsule, Zheng Tan poured the powder into the teapot and put some into the teacups on the table. He didn't know what tea leaves were in the teacups, and Zheng Tan didn't know what they were. He hoped that it wouldn't affect the medicine's effects. After doing all this, Zheng Tan heard some movement from the stairs, so he quickly hid under the bed. He didn't know if the side effects that the Jiaopa mentioned would happen, but Zheng Tan could only try. The person who came in was still the same auntie. Zheng Tan was puzzled. This auntie was a woman in her 40s. From what he remembered, she wasn't very fat, yet she was still taking weight loss medicine. Moreover, when Zheng Tan was rummaging through the drawers, he saw a jewelry box with many gold necklaces and gold earrings. No one would criticize you for being vain, but these gold and silver jewelry were all bought with the money from selling the children, right? It was said that women were emotional creatures, so no matter what, they should have some maternal instincts when facing children, right? What was this auntie thinking when she stole the children? Little Wimp and the other two poor children were probably just a part of the many children she sold. Who knew how many years they had been in this business, but they seemed to be quite skilled. Zheng Tan felt that he was already a scumbag when he was a human. He didn't expect that after turning into a cat, he would still be able to see people who were so shameless. Just as Zheng Tan was thinking, the auntie came to the bedside and sat down. She picked up the cup of tea leaves and drank 2 mouthfuls. She frowned. She felt that the taste was not right, and the tea was already a little cold. She opened the window, poured out the tea in the cup, and picked up the teapot to pour another cup. After taking 2 sips, she still felt that the taste was different from before. However, the little 3-wheeled motorcycle driver downstairs was urging her to make lunch, so she didn't think too much about it. She finished the tea in the cup and hurried downstairs. Zheng Tan couldn't see the woman's movements, but he could roughly guess what she was doing from her voice. Hearing the sound of the auntie drinking water, Zheng Tan was relieved. However, he wasn't sure whether it was effective or not. How much did the auntie drink? How much did she drink? Could she produce the effect that the Jiaopa mentioned? Zheng Tan didn't know. However, as long as he could weaken their power, it would be fine. Otherwise, Zheng Tan could only find an opportunity to destroy them one by one. After a while, the smell of food came from downstairs. Zheng Tan was a little hungry, but at this time he could only endure it. This was his own fault, so even if it was uncomfortable, he had to endure it. Squatting under the bed, Zheng Tan thought about his next plan. In fact, he didn't have a specific plan. He could only take one step at a time. He didn't know these people, and he couldn't expose himself. What should he do? Those people were eating lunch, but the old man didn't come out of the room. It was the auntie who brought the food in. Zheng Tan suspected that the old man couldn't move. If that was the case, it would be more advantageous for Zheng Tan. It was noon. He didn't know what the Jiaopa was doing. What would they do when they found out that he was missing? Zheng Tan still remembered the old lady's exasperated screams when he ran to the 3-wheeled motorcycle. He didn't know if he would be scolded when he went back. After lunch, the 3 of them discussed something in the room. After the auntie came out, she went back to her room to sleep. Zheng Tan listened to the conversation between her and the 3-wheeled motorcycle driver. It seemed that they were going to take action at night. Were they going to move the children tonight? Were they going to ship them to a foreign buyer? Time was running out, and Zheng Tan felt that he had to do something. After a while, the 3-wheeled motorcycle driver came over. He was going to buy the bus ticket. He came over to greet the auntie and ask if there was anything else he wanted to buy. However, after he called out a few times at the door, the auntie didn't respond. Zheng Tan's ears twitched, and he listened to the abnormal breathing of the person on the bed. Was the medicine working? After the 3-wheeled motorcycle driver called out a few more times, he opened the door impatiently. However, he found that the person on the bed didn't look right. Her limbs were spasming, and she looked like she was having difficulty breathing. Hey, what's wrong with you? What's going on? The 3-wheeled motorcycle driver walked to the bedside and asked a few more questions. There was still no response. The person on the bed had a very high body temperature. Coupled with the symptoms, the 3-wheeled motorcycle driver was scared. He quickly ran to the closed door and knocked on it. Uncle Hook, open the door. Something's wrong. When the old man opened the door, his voice was filled with anxiety. What's wrong? What's wrong? The three-wheeled motorcycle driver pointed at the person on the bed. She seems to be sick. Uncle, is it epilepsy? After listening to the three-wheeled motorcycle driver, the old man calmed down a lot. As long as no one came to investigate, it wasn't a big deal. Bad luck. Something went wrong at the crucial moment. The old man scolded. Uncle Hook, do you have any medicine? We can't let her stay like this forever. The plan for tonight's operation has already been arranged. We can't do it without her. I'm a grown man, and I can't bring a child so far away. I'm guessing that the moment we leave the station, we will be targeted by the police. You also said that we can't give the child sleeping pills anymore. That won't sell for a good price. Only she has the means to coax the child. I really can't take care of the child. The three-wheeled motorcycle driver said anxiously. The old man spat and scolded a few more times. After that, he asked the three-wheeled motorcycle driver to bring the person to a small clinic not too far from here. That clinic is closed. The boss is preparing to buy a house in the city. When I came back today, the door was closed and no one was there. The three-wheeled motorcycle driver said. Then see which hospital is closest to here. Send her there. Try to avoid people as much as possible. Of course I know. She put on makeup today. This place is also far from the amusement park. If we go out, no one will recognize her. Zheng Tan watched them busy for a while. The three-wheeled motorcycle driver took the auntie away. Hearing the sound of the three-wheeled motorcycle driving away, Zheng Tan let out a long sigh of relief. If it was only the old man, it would be much easier. But that old man has been hiding in the room all this time. How could he lure him out? Zheng Tan ran downstairs. The layout downstairs was much simpler. The motorcycle that the three-wheeled motorcycle driver used to ride was there. The bedroom downstairs should be where the three-wheeled motorcycle driver slept. It was a little messy and there was nothing special about it. The windows downstairs were installed with anti-theft nets. Zheng Tan gave up on the plan of jumping out of the window. After thinking for a while, he opened the door. Even if someone came in to steal something, Zheng Tan was not afraid. After all, it was not his house. These people deserved to be robbed. It was good that someone came in. The sooner they found out the old man's secret. After looking around, Zheng Tan went upstairs again. Zheng Tan looked around and then went to the auntie's room. He held the teacup and threw it at the window. Pa! There was a hole in the window. The teacup was also thrown out. These three people were so strict with outsiders. That meant that many people around them did not know that they were selling children. Zheng Tan felt that since he could not do it himself, he should get help from others. Zheng Tan continued to look for things to throw out of the window. Anyway, it was not his house. He did not feel bad about it. Teapot kicked. Table flipped. All the drawers were pulled out and thrown on the floor. Things were thrown everywhere. There was also a box of jewelry that the auntie had hidden. It was also thrown on the floor. Gold chains, gold earrings, etc., were all thrown on the floor. The sound of the window being smashed attracted many people who lived around. Someone saw that the door of the house was open, and called out twice at the door. No one answered, but no one came in. Recently, many families had quarreled over the distribution of land compensation. There were also people who were injured because of this. The people around thought that it was probably because of this, so no one wanted to get involved. Besides, they were not familiar with this family. They just stood at the door and watched, talking among themselves. The old man inside actually heard the noise outside. He opened the thick curtains a little and looked outside. After hesitating for a while, he still did not open the door. He called the other two people, but they did not pick up. The old man had a bad feeling. He walked around the 10-square-meter room twice, lit a cigarette, and sat there smoking. There was a knife with a blood groove beside his hand. If it was just a thief, the old man was not afraid. It was fine as long as it was not the police. If the things outside were stolen, then so be it. As for the losses, he could earn it back by doing a few transactions. After sitting for a while, he still felt nervous. The old man picked up a white plastic wine bottle beside him, unscrewed the lid, poured a cup of wine, and drank 2 mouthfuls. The wine could embolden the old man, and the ruthlessness in his eyes became stronger. Although his leg was a little injured, it did not affect his decisiveness. The narrow room was filled with smoke, and the little boy on the crib moved his eyelids. It was probably because the sleeping pills had worn off, and he looked like he was about to wake up. Zheng Tan saw that the old man was still holed up inside, and the people outside did not come in. He could not help but feel a little angry. He glanced at the messy things on the floor, and then looked at the closed door. Since the old man did not come out, then he would directly use force. He could not wait for the little three-wheel driver to come back. If that happened, then all his efforts would be wasted. He heard the noise outside and did not open the door. Then the old man would not open the door even if he went to knock. Zheng Tan observed the door of the auntie's room and the closed door of the room. They looked about the same. If it was only this kind of door, he could still kick it open. He could not hesitate anymore. Zheng Tan came to the door, took a few steps back, took a deep breath, sped up, jumped up, and used all his strength to kick the door lock. Originally, Zheng Tan planned to kick the door open within 3 times. He did not expect that this time, the door would be directly kicked open. The old man inside had just drunk wine, and was about to come out with the knife to take a look. Just as he approached the door suddenly opened with a bang, directly hitting his head. Chapter 111. Zheng Tan, who was about to kick the old man a few more times, saw the fire spreading, and didn't care about him anymore. He kicked the knife in the old man's hand to one side, then ran to the crib and looked at the little brat inside. The little brat had already woken up, and looked like he was about to cry. However, after seeing Zheng Tan, his face that was about to cry calmed down, and he even started to laugh. What the hell was he laughing at? Zheng Tan couldn't care about anything else. The fire was getting stronger, and the heat in the air was getting stronger. If he continued to stay here, it would be difficult for him to breathe, and it would be very harmful to the little brat. Zheng Tan hurriedly lifted the little brat up, then started to run with his 2 legs. Stepping over the old man blocking the door, Zheng Tan carried the little brat and ran downstairs. The old man who had fallen to the ground covered his head, and was about to get up when he suddenly felt a black figure jump over him. Because his head had been hit, and when he fell to the ground, the back of his head hit the stool on the ground. He was a little dizzy, and couldn't see things clearly. The old man couldn't see anything from the black figure, but the one above the black figure was very familiar. Right. It was the big one. Someone had snatched the big one away. The old man's mind wasn't very clear, and his vision was blurry. His sense of distance wasn't very strong, and as long as he was a little more clear-headed, he wouldn't be able to connect that little black figure to a person. The fire around him was getting stronger and stronger, and the old man slowly realized that he couldn't stay here for long. Holding on to the door frame, he stood up, but after a few breaths, he felt that his mind was getting more and more muddled. This was a narrow little room, and the doors and windows were similar to other rooms. The only special thing was that the windows were covered with thick curtains, and the walls and door were covered with sound-absorbing cotton. This was to prevent the conversation inside from leaking out, or the cries of the baby from leaking out. Perhaps some could be heard outside the door, but outside the building it was fine as long as the people outside couldn't hear. The requirements weren't high, so they kept the original wooden door. This was also the reason why Zheng Tan was able to succeed with a kick. Of course, there was also a coincidence that even Zheng Tan didn't expect. No matter what, Zheng Tan wanted to quickly carry Little Wimp out and settle the matter. But when he reached the staircase on the first floor, Zheng Tan stopped in his tracks. He had almost forgotten that there were still some onlookers standing outside the entrance of this small building. He couldn't just carry the little brat out like this. Zheng Tan placed Little Wimp on the ground floor of the first floor. Seeing that Little Wimp was still looking at him, he laughed so hard that saliva was coming out of his mouth. Zheng Tan raised his hand and poked him. He hoped to poke this little brat until he cried. As long as he cried, the people outside would come in, right? Unfortunately, the little brat laughed even more happily. Zheng Tan. Left with no choice, Zheng Tan walked behind Little Wimp and pushed him outside. Little Wimp thought that Zheng Tan was playing with him, so he was pushed forward while lying on the ground. He didn't even know that his sleeves were dirty. Hey, is there a child inside? a resident said as he looked inside. Looks like it. It looks like he's crawling out. The first floor was a little dark. Looking from the light to the dark, many details couldn't be seen clearly. However, Zheng Tan could clearly see the reactions of the people outside. Little Wimp was originally playing happily when he suddenly realized that the pushing force was gone. When he looked back, there was nothing. When he looked forward, there was a bunch of strangers. Wah! Finally seeing Little Wimp cry, Zheng Tan heaved a sigh of relief. There were already people coming in from outside. After standing at the staircase on the second floor and watching Little Wimp being carried away, Zheng Tan also jumped out of the utility room that he came in from. It was easier to climb up, but more difficult to climb down. Fortunately, there wasn't anyone behind this small building. Zheng Tan slowly slid down from the window on the second floor and jumped to the ground. When he walked to the front of the small building, many people had already seen the burning curtains on the second floor and smelled the burnt smell. Some called the police, some rushed to the rescue. Zheng Tan saw that the old man was dragged out. He seemed to still be alive, but he had fainted. Just as he was looking, a police car drove over. They just called the police. Why are they here so quickly? Some of the residents were curious. Zheng Tan looked behind the police cars. The Paws car was also there. He immediately felt relieved. This way, Little Wimp didn't need to look for the police. He could directly be taken away by the Paw. After putting out the fire, the Paw had already found Little Wimp, who was being hugged by the residents and crying at the top of his lungs. Little Wimp's father also drove over and hugged him. The father and son cried together. The Paw called the other relatives and elders to let them know that they were safe. Then he looked at a spot on Little Wimp's back that looked like a cat's paw print. He walked to the side, looked at the surrounding bushes, and shouted in a low voice, "Black charcoal? Come out quickly. I know you're around." Hearing the Paws shout, Zheng Tan poked his head out from behind a tree. Seeing the black cat's head, the Paw, who was about to smile and call his cat over, had a strange expression on his face. Little Wimp's father saw the old man being dragged out by the residents and was a little agitated. If it weren't for the few police officers holding him back, he probably would have gone over and kicked him. Many of the residents were watching the development of the situation and didn't pay attention to the Paw. A leading police officer walked over and chatted with the Paw for a while. "It's confirmed that it's him. We also found a few phones upstairs. Due to the fire, they were damaged to varying degrees. However, all the information we need is on them. We will investigate further based on the call records and numbers. However, these people don't usually use their real names. Once they feel that something is wrong, they will change their phone number and even their code name. We can't say how much we can find for now." "Okay. Thank you for your hard work." The Paw paused and asked again, "Did you find out the cause of the fire?" "There's a speculation. The old man likes to drink high alcohol content liquor. I don't know where he got it from, but there might be some industrial alcohol in it. The old man likes to smoke, and the weather has been good lately. Otherwise, it wouldn't have caught fire so easily. You haven't seen the house before. There are a lot of flammable things in there, and some low-quality sound-absorbent cotton. Not only did it catch fire, it also produced a lot of poisonous gas. The old man inhaled a lot of it. However, the old man was lucky. A few days ago, a nightclub also caught fire due to some unknown reasons. Some of the things in there burned and produced hydrogen cyanide. If it had happened here today, the old man would have died. Hydrogen cyanide was a deadly poison. The Paw was very clear about this." "How's the old man now?" the Paw asked. Knowing that it wasn't his cat that started the fire, the Paw felt a lot more at ease. "He was dragged out in time. He survived, but he won't be able to live for long. With all the crimes he committed, the law won't let him live." It was October, and the weather was good. Many people were still wearing short sleeves and busily working. The policeman who talked to the Paw had sweat all over his forehead. At this time, a policeman came to look for him. He said a few words to the Paw and left. Zheng Tan listened to the conversation between the policeman and the Paw from the bushes. He knew that they had been investigating the three-wheeled motorcycle driver. When they were at the hospital, they had arrested him and the woman. At the same time, they had also found a silly baby girl in the three-wheeled motorcycle driver's car. The three-wheeled motorcycle driver was going to find a place to throw the baby away. The Jiaopa stopped paying attention. They were either investigating the human traffickers or focusing on the child. Black Charcoal, go back to the car and stay there for a while, the Jiaopa said as he walked towards the parking lot. As he walked, he glanced at his cat, and the corner of his eyes twitched. Opening the car door, the Jiaopa asked Zheng Tan to get into the car. It would probably be a while before they left. There were some snacks in the car for Zheng Tan to eat. Zheng Tan didn't care about anything else. After getting into the car, he grabbed the snacks and opened them to eat. There were still some stains on his feet, and he stepped on the car seat. The Jiaopa didn't say anything when he saw this. He lifted Zheng Tan up and checked. The Jiaopa didn't find any injuries on his cat. He was walking and running normally, and his appetite was still very good. Black Charcoal, thank you for your hard work, the Jiaopa said in the end. He really had to thank his cat for this. Otherwise, they wouldn't be investigating the three-wheeled motorcycle. The Jiaopa glanced at his cat again, sighed, closed the car door, and walked towards the house. Zheng Tan didn't care about what happened there. Moreover, he felt that since the Jiaopa was able to detect some of the things he did, he would definitely help cover up some of the traces. The Jiaopa would make up some nonsense that didn't make sense. Anyway, he wasn't worried. He had saved the child, so he just needed to fill his stomach first. After eating and drinking, Zheng Tan didn't do anything else. He leaned against the car window and looked at the crowd outside. There were more and more residents gathering around. There was no lack of people in the world who wanted to see what was going on. Yawning, Zheng Tan leaned against the back seat and closed his eyes to rest. He hadn't slept much since last night. Now that he was relaxed, he felt a little tired. After some time, Zheng Tan heard the car door open. He opened his eyes and saw the Jiaopa coming in. He looked out the window again. Other than the 2 police cars that were still parked there, the other cars were preparing to leave. The Jiaopa and the child's father didn't go back first. They went to the hospital first, where the child's mother was. I'll go to the hospital first. Do you still want to stay in the car? The Jiaopa asked after parking the car. Zheng Tan's ears twitched, and the tip of his tail wagged twice. He didn't have any intention of getting up. Okay. After closing the car door, the Jiaopa and the others walked towards the hospital. Knowing that their child was fine, the adults and the elderly were so happy that they cried. That had nothing to do with Zheng Tan. He just wanted to go back and take a good shower and catch up on sleep. When they entered the hospital, there were a few people together. When they came out, it was only the Jiaopa. The people in the hospital were too enthusiastic. The child's father even pulled the Jiaopa to thank him properly. The Jiaopa said that he had something to do and left first. When he returned to his house, the Jiaoma was waiting at the door. The 2 children rushed out as soon as they heard the noise. They were told that their cat was fine over the phone, so they waited in the living room. They didn't even want to watch the TV. Black Charcoal, the Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo both ran out. However, when Zheng Tan came out of the car, the Jiaoma and the 2 children's expressions were a little strange. Previously, Zheng Tan felt that there was something wrong with the Jiaopa's expression, but he didn't think too much about it. He just thought that what happened to him this time was a little strange. But now, even if he couldn't figure it out, Zheng Tan knew that something was wrong. Little Pomelo pointed at Zheng Tan and said in surprise, "Black Charcoal, your beard." Beard? Previously, when they were in the small building, Zheng Tan had focused all her attention on how to bring the little wimp out of the burning room, and how to make sure that the little wimp was discovered without implicating herself, so she did not pay attention to anything else. Zheng Tan, who was walking towards the house, turned around and jumped into the car. He climbed into the driver's seat, and stretched his neck to look at himself in the rearview mirror. Then the alpaca in his heart started running again. Chapter 112. Zheng Tan stared at the rearview mirror for half a minute, and even looked at it from different angles. In the end, he realized that not a single strand of his beard was intact. The originally black, straight, and resilient strands of beard were now F*** curly. Cats not only had beards on both sides of their mouths, but they also had beards on other parts of their bodies, such as above their eyes, cheeks, and chins. However, people didn't call them beards, and they were easy to overlook. Sometimes, some people called the beards above their eyes eyebrows. Now, Zheng Tan's fur was almost all burned off in the places with long beards, but the beards on both sides of his mouth were more obvious. The eyebrows were curled, and the beards were curled, and they were curled unevenly. Zheng Tan wanted to smash the rearview mirror. However, considering that this was a new car that the Jiaopa had just bought a few days ago, Zheng Tan endured it. Jumping out of the car, Zheng Tan covered his ears, ignored the others, and walked straight into the house. "Did Black Charcoal get hurt?" asked the Jiaoma. "I think so." The Jiaopa nodded. The Jiaoma decided to comfort her cat and make more delicious food for dinner. Little Pomelo was very anxious when she knew that her cat's beard was burned off. She was relieved when the Jiaopa explained that it would grow back after a while. However, even though he knew that his beard would grow back in the future, Zheng Tan was still in a bad mood. After entering the house, he stayed in the room. Every once in a while, he would jump on the table and look at himself in the mirror. He was in a bad mood when he saw the curled beard. In the end, Zheng Tan made a decision. After looking through a few rooms, he saw a pair of scissors on the old lady's bedside table. Zheng Tan took the scissors and put it in front of little Pomelo, who had been following behind him. "Cut the beard." Little Pomelo looked at the scissors on the floor and was a little worried. Zheng Tan pushed the scissors closer to little Pomelo, meaning, "Cut it." Instead of cutting off Zheng Tan's beard, little Pomelo first asked the Jiaopa for confirmation. Then, she picked up the scissors and carefully cut off the curly cat's whiskers one by one. The parts that were not burned by the fire were still preserved and had not been cut off. Because the beard was not very regular when it was burned, the length of the curls was also different, so after cutting it, it was obviously long and short, looking very awkward. The roots of a cat's whiskers were covered with nerves, which allowed them to detect slight movements. It was said that they could even feel something as light as a milligram brushing past them. They could even distinguish the airflow and direction of the wind. Because of the importance of whiskers to cats, little Pomelo was very serious. The Jiao Yuan watched from the side and did not even dare to breathe loudly. He was afraid that if he made any noise, he would disturb little Pomelo and cut off the cat's whiskers. The Jiaopa, who was sitting on the sofa, actually wanted to say that as long as the roots of the whiskers were not damaged, it did not matter how much was cut off or how little was cut. However, seeing the two children's nervous faces and the obviously depressed cat, the Jiaopa did not say anything. After cutting the whiskers, little Pomelo and the Jiao Yuan, who was watching from the side, both let out a sigh of relief. Little Pomelo put the curly cat's whiskers in a small plastic bag and put it in a box to keep it. Zheng Tan raised his paw and touched the whiskers. They were obviously much shorter. The shortest whiskers were almost touching the cat's mouth. F***ck, it was not easy to be a hero, but the price was the curly whiskers that were burned. Jumping on the table and looking at the mirror on the table, Zheng Tan tilted his face and looked at himself from a few different angles. He felt that without the whiskers, the cat's aura suddenly changed from mighty and domineering to wretched and funny. It was really frustrating. "Don't worry, the whiskers will grow back soon." Little Pomelo comforted him. Zheng Tan wagged his tail. It would definitely grow back, but how long would it take for it to become the same as before? No one could say for sure. It could be a week or two, or more than a month, or even longer. There was no absolute answer. Different cats seemed to have different whiskers growing at different speeds. This was the Jiaopa's conclusion. The most depressing moment for Zheng Tan was when the Grandpa Jiao came back. Knowing that it was his son's black cat that they were able to find the little brat so quickly, the Grandpa Jiao bought a big fish when he passed by the market to reward the cat. However, when he got home, he found that the whiskers on both sides of the cat's face were short and uneven. The old man was curious and insisted on asking the Jiaopa why. The Jiaopa said that there was a fire at the human trafficker's place, and that his cat was burned there. The old man was a little distressed when he heard that, but then he started to laugh. After a day of depression, he was finally able to relax. He laughed very loudly, which made the two children unhappy. It's nothing. Many people in our village have cats. There are many who have their whiskers burned by the stove in the winter. They'll grow back soon. It's okay, but this cat's movements will probably be affected. The old man sat on the sofa and reached out to touch Zheng Tan's whiskers. Zheng Tan turned his head and slapped the old man's hand away. "Oh, you're angry." The Grandpa Jiao was not angry when his hand was slapped away. After this incident, the old man felt that this cat was indeed very rare. Hearing his grandson say that his cat was in a bad mood because it had lost its whiskers, the Grandpa Jiao was a little suspicious, but he did not continue to tease it. The old man had never thought about how a cat could be in a bad mood, but after this incident, he knew that this cat was intelligent, so he did not say anything more. The old people believed in some sayings. In the early years in his hometown, people had to respect animals with intelligence, but the old man looked at the cat in front of him and could not bring himself to respect it. No matter how he looked at it, it was funny. He just wanted to tease it. Shaking his head, the old man put his hands behind his back and walked to the kitchen. He saw the old lady cooking fish, and was even pointing at it. The old lady chased him out with a spatula. In the end, he went to the living room to watch TV with the children. The little boy's parents called to thank them, and said that they wanted to treat the Jiaopa and the others to a meal. They even wanted to bring the cat. This was the first time they had formally invited a cat to a meal, but the Jiaopa rejected them. The little boy's mother was still lying in the hospital, and probably could not be discharged for the time being. They were all relatives and friends, so there was no need to go through so much trouble. Grandpa Jiao also said that those who were sick should rest, and those who were taking care of the child should take care of the child. He was afraid that this incident would traumatize the child. They had to check if there were any side effects of the sleeping pills. If they wanted to thank him, they would have plenty of opportunities to do so in the future. Since the Grandpa Jiao had said so, the little boy's parents did not insist. They only said that they would have a gathering during the new year, and they would definitely treat them well. In fact, many people only knew that Associate Professor Jiao's cat was responsible for finding the three-wheeled motorcycle driver. As for what happened in the building where the human traffickers were hiding, they did not think that the cat was responsible. They only thought that someone else was involved, which led to the series of events that followed. After all, no one would have thought that a cat could create such trouble for the human traffickers. Even the Jiaopa would not have thought that his cat could carry a child and run downstairs. Since the cat was not involved, there were many suspicious points in the case. The investigation was still ongoing. However, since the cause of the fire could not be found, and the old man was not very clear-headed, they could not get anything out of him. Now their work temporarily shifted from the direction of the fire to the search for the three human traffickers. Human traffickers were involved in a wide range of transactions. For example, the three that were caught this time, there were people above them who were in contact with even more human traffickers who sold children. It could be in the city or the province, or it could be in other provinces. Therefore, according to the information at hand, the work in the future would be even more difficult. Now some people were rubbing their hands and preparing to do big things in order to be promoted. They would not keep thinking about how the small building caught fire, or how the little boy climbed downstairs. Just 5 hours after the old man was caught, one of the provincial public security department's highway traffic police detachment drove a police car to a toll station. They found a suspicious woman carrying a baby. When they questioned her, the woman looked panicked and full of loopholes. After more questioning, the woman finally confessed that she had broken the law. And in these two cases, there were parts that were related. They had people in common. After the investigation, through the unified feedback of the investigation results, more than 200 people were involved in the investigation within half a year. More than 100 children were involved in the investigation. A nationwide arrest operation had begun. However, that was a story for later. Let's not talk about it for now. Zheng Tan would not pay special attention to the child trafficking cases. He was now squatting on the sofa in distress. Many people said that a beard was like a ruler or a snail's antennae. It could help a cat detect the width of the road, so that it could move freely and accurately. Without a beard, their movements would become sluggish and lifeless. For Zheng Tan, it was not sluggish or lifeless. It was just that he was not used to it. Hearing it from others was one thing, but the one who felt it the most was Zheng Tan himself. Previously, when he was in a bad mood, Zheng Tan put all his thoughts on the burnt beard. But now, after calming down, he realized that it did feel like something was missing. It was not entirely a psychological effect, but a real feeling. Usually, he did not pay much attention to it, but when he slept at night in the dead of the night, Zheng Tan always felt that his senses had become a little sluggish. As an extremely important tactile organ for cats, the function of the beard was also reflected. They were a supplement to the visual senses. After losing the beard, Zheng Tan truly understood the function of the long beard. The long beard above the eyes and on the cheeks could remind Zheng Tan of objects that were harmful to the eyes and other parts of the face. After touching them, he would avoid them, so that he would not bump into them without seeing them. Usually he would sleep and eat as usual. His appetite was not bad. Zheng Tan would not let his stomach suffer because of losing the beard. However, he did feel uncomfortable and did not feel smooth. Sometimes Zheng Tan would feel uneasy. He did not know if it was the aftereffects of losing the beard. Could it be that he was too sensitive? Zheng Tan lay on the sofa and pondered. However, before Zheng Tan could adjust his state of mind, the National Day holiday was almost over. Because of the incident with the little brat, everyone did not go back to their hometown. They only stayed in town for a few days, then prepared to return to Chuhua City. Before leaving, Grandpa Jiao even told the Jiaopa to bring the cats back for the new year. When the time came, he would make a beautiful cat bed for them. The Jiaopa only smiled and did not say much. They knew that their cats always slept on the bed. Knowing that they were going back to Chuhua, Zheng Tan's mood improved a little. Chapter 113. Zheng Tan didn't leave the house for the first week after returning to the eastern courtyard. After the National Day holiday, Jiao Wei and the others started their classes. At noon, Jiao Wei picked up little Pomelo for lunch at the small restaurant and brought a portion back for Zheng Tan. After the holiday, when Jiao Wei saw Zheng Tan, he didn't know what to say. If it was a normal cat, he might have smiled, but facing this black cat, he couldn't smile, and he didn't dare to smile. In the past, he didn't believe that a cat could be so capable, but now, Jiao Wei was shaken. In October, no one came to his small restaurant to ask for sanitary fees, and no one came looking for trouble. His father said that it might be because it wasn't time yet, but Jiao Wei didn't think that was the reason, especially after going to the night building. He opened the door and put the lunchbox on the chair. The black cat, lying on the sofa, yawned lazily, stretched, and began to eat his lunch. The cat's whiskers had grown a little after this week, better than when they were first cut, but Zheng Tan still thought that it was growing too slowly. At this speed, it would take more than a week for it to be barely noticeable. And for it to be the same as before, it would take even longer. However, after this incident, Zheng Tan felt that the whiskers were much more sensitive than before, and he didn't know if it was because of his deliberate training. After returning home, when Zheng Tan was bored alone at home, he would flip through the magazines that Jiaopa subscribed to. Once he happened to see an article in a not-so-formal magazine, and the general idea was as follows. A scientist did this experiment. After they blindfolded a cat for a period of time, compared to a normal cat without blindfolds, the former's whiskers grew more, and the average length of the whiskers was 5 millimeters longer than a normal cat's. Therefore, some people jokingly said that in order to let a cat recover faster after its whiskers were cut, it could be blindfolded. Zheng Tan didn't want to cover his eyes, but after careful consideration, he felt that he could give it a try. Sometimes, when he was at home, Zheng Tan would close his eyes and use his beard's sense of touch to determine what was happening around him, and the objects he came into contact with. The article also said that in the dark, a cat's whiskers have a very sensitive and rapid sense of touch. Cats can use it to identify invisible things. Zheng Tan had tried it before. He didn't know if it was because he was too slow or because his beard hadn't grown properly, but it wasn't as effective as the article said. However, none of this made Zheng Tan give up the idea of trying. As a cat with only half a beard, a cat that could only hide at home and entertain itself, this was the pleasure he had finally found after being bored out of his mind. Since there was no one at home most of the time during the day, Zheng Tan could boldly give it a try. Even if he made a fool of himself, no one would see it. For example, in the afternoon after the lunch break, Jiao Wei would send little Pomelo to school, and he would go to class himself, or go to the library to study. Zheng Tan would jump off the sofa, close his eyes, and start to mobilize his senses to the greatest extent to feel the things around him, and the sensations caused by some slight movements. The wind blew in from the balcony, and Zheng Tan could roughly determine the obstacles in front of him from the surrounding airflow. In addition to the whiskers, Zheng Tan also felt that there was something special about the front paws. Some vibrations on the ground could be felt through the fur on the front paws. Zheng Tan didn't pay attention to it before, but now it seemed that the reason why cats were so alert and could react quickly to small movements was not only because of experience, but also because of some of their evolved abilities. Zheng Tan now hoped to be able to make greater use of these unearthed abilities, so that when he went out in the future, they could come in handy. Since Zheng Tan's beard was cut, the advertisements that he had with Xiaoguo also stopped. Xiaoguo called every few days to ask about the situation, and he was even more anxious than Zheng Tan. But it was impossible to let a cat with a broken beard appear in an advertisement, right? That would make people laugh their heads off, and some people with ulterior motives might even connect the matter of the whiskers to cat food. There was no lack of people in the world who would seize the opportunity to put the blame on you. Therefore, even if he was anxious, Xiaoguo had to endure it. For this reason, Xiaoguo also looked for a lot of people to seek the secret to make cats grow whiskers faster. Zheng Tan ignored him. Now that he had just figured out the whisker game, he didn't want to try other uncertain methods. If there was a chance that the whiskers would fall off, it would be useless. Every morning when he got up, the first thing Zheng Tan did was to touch his whiskers, and then look in the mirror. Little Pomelo also measured Zheng Tan every day. Every whisker was recorded, and little Pomelo recorded it in a book. Looking at the increase in the number, everyone was very pleased. Knowing that a cat's whiskers would grow was one thing, but really seeing and confirming that it was growing was another thing. After confirming it, there was no need to worry. After playing the whisker game, Zheng Tan went to the balcony, leaned against the pot of orchid, and squinted his eyes to bask in the sun. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of claws stepping on the iron mesh sounded. Zheng Tan moved his ears but ignored it. During the National Day holiday, many people went out, but not General's home. There were too many people going out on National Day, but its owner didn't. Instead, he brought General back to school. However, General spent most of the year playing outside, wandering in various nature reserves. Anyway, it didn't need money to play. Seeing that Zheng Tan ignored it, General stopped for a while. However, Zheng Tan didn't close his eyes for long before he heard the long-lost voice from the balcony on the 4th floor diagonally below. Why are the flowers so red? Why are they so red? Ah, red like a burning fire. Red your ass. Zheng Tan tugged at her ears and turned to leave. As she walked, she glanced downstairs. She was just casually looking, but then she saw a familiar car driving in. F***CK, why did Third Master Feng, this busy guy, come again? Feng Xiaokong had called Jiaopa. He had just driven from Beijing to Chuhua City today. Originally, he had only brought some seafood to the Jiao family. If there was no one at home, he would bring it directly to Associate Professor Jiao's office. However, knowing that the cat was at home, he came directly to the eastern courtyard to take a look. However, on the phone, Associate Professor Jiao's tone was a little strange. This made the Third Master Feng even more interested. He hadn't seen the cat during the holiday. What did it do again? After parking the car, the Third Master Feng looked up at the 5th floor. His eyesight was very good, and he happened to see the black tips of the ears. Black Charcoal, come down and open the door. The Third Master Feng shouted from downstairs. Zheng Tan hesitated for a while, but still opened the door and went downstairs to swipe the access card. Hey, why are you cooped up at home? Aren't you usually outside at this time? Before the Third Master Feng could finish his sentence, he saw the black cat in front of him with half of its beard. He was silent for a while, then squatted down and laughed. What the hell are you laughing about? Zheng Tan ignored him. After swiping the access card, he went upstairs directly. Wait, let me take a breather. The Third Master Feng stood up and walked upstairs with a bag. I also brought you some seafood as snacks. Panting, he went up to the 5th floor and put down the bag. The Third Master Feng stood in front of Zheng Tan and looked at Zheng Tan's beard carefully. Then he took out his phone and prepared to take a photo. These days, only people like the third Master Fong used high-end phones and took good photos. However, Zheng Tan was troubled. Wasn't it just a short beard? What was so strange about it? Don't move, don't move. I'll take a photo for my daughter. Hey, don't move. Turn around and take a look. Zheng Tan directly slapped the third Master Fong's phone away. He picked up the phone and tried to make 2 calls. It was still working. He put it in his pocket. The third Master Fong took a paper cup from the water dispenser and drank some water. Then he sat on the sofa and rested for a while. He said to Zheng Tan, "Your beard should grow out next month, right?" Without waiting for Zheng Tan to answer, the third Master Fong continued, "It should grow out. When I was young, I saw a big tabby cat whose beard was curled up. It grew out in 3 weeks. Yours should be about the same." Zheng Tan was speechless. My beard was curled up even more. How about this? I'll take you out to play next month when I have time. There are many people with pets there. I'll come to find you then, and you can help me socialize. There are a few customers who like cats. If you're there, the business talks will be smoother. I'll let your cat father know and set a time first. The third Master Fong's self-answering mode lasted for 2 minutes. Then he took a phone call and left in a hurry. He probably hadn't finished his business in Chuhua City yet. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been running around. Even a big businessman like him had his worries. Socializing was an essential part of his business. Whether he was a small office worker or a big boss with a lot of money, everyone had their own worries behind the halo. After the third Master Fong left, Zheng Tan looked at the calendar on the wall. His beard should grow back in a month. In the evening, Celestine came over. The National Day holiday had just ended. The second day after the Jiao family came back, Celestine came over. But when he saw that Zheng Tan didn't want to go out with his half-grown beard, he didn't take him out. Today, Celestine didn't have much hope that Zheng Tan would go to the night building with him. But he didn't expect that Zheng Tan would really want to go out today. When you're in a bad mood, you need to vent. Zheng Tan was depressed. Celestine came at the right time. In the car, Celestine looked at the cat in the back seat. Its beard had grown a little, but it was obviously only half grown. He heard that it was in a bad mood recently. Suddenly, Celestine had a bad feeling. In the evening, Yihao, Ranchi, and Leopard came to the night building to relax. The night building wasn't the only business in his hands. He was usually busy outside. When he was free, he would come to the night building to listen to the East Palace's performance and relax. Before he came, Yihao had received a report from his subordinates and knew that Wei Lung had also come. However, he didn't know that Wei Lung had brought a cat with him because Zheng Tan had been nestled in the backpack and no one had seen him. He felt that it was embarrassing to let others see half of his beard. Yihao and the other 2 came to the 3rd floor. At the door of Celestine's private room, they saw Celestine squatting there and smoking. "What's wrong? Why are you squatting here?" Chapter 114. Yihao slammed the door shut and looked at Celestine. "Why is it here again?" Celestine got up and stretched his body. "That guy is in a bad mood and came over to vent. But this time he didn't drink. He'll be fine after roaring for an hour or 2. "An hour or 2? How long have you been here?" Yihao asked. Celestine took out his phone and looked at it. "More than 50 minutes. Almost an hour." Yihao shook his head and was about to suggest a change of location. He didn't want to keep Celestine waiting here, but before he could say anything, the door opened. This time, there was no magic sound. Zheng Tan opened the door himself. After opening the door, he didn't look at the people outside. He ran to the sofa and lay down to rest. He was tired from singing and had vented most of his emotions. He drank a glass of water and peed. His mood was much better. Yihao looked at the open door and signaled to Celestine to decide. Celestine pursed his lips and walked into the room with a cigarette in his mouth. Yihao followed him in. Leopard and Ranchi behind him were hesitant, especially Ranchi. He looked like he had been constipated for a long time. After being bumped by Leopard, he touched the necklace he was wearing, took a deep breath, and walked in. Zheng Tan didn't want to know what these people were talking about, but his ears caught a few key words and it still piqued his interest. Yihao was going to take over the abandoned project around Chuhua University and develop that area. In fact, he had been eyeing that piece of land for a long time, but he hadn't decided to do it. In the past, there was a huge wave because of that project. At that time, Yi Hao was wise to protect himself and didn't get involved. Later, there was a change in personnel, and a group of people fell one after another. A few years ago, the person who could do whatever he wanted in Chuhua City disappeared. It wasn't until this summer that Yi Hao started paying attention to that piece of land again. However, even now it was not easy to make a move. This was also the reason why he had been looking for a way. "How are things now?" Celestine asked. "I've contacted the third Master Feng and made an appointment. We'll talk then." Yi Hao rubbed his forehead and said, "We don't necessarily need the third Master Feng's help. We just want to know what the third Master Feng's attitude is right now. If he's not bad, it shouldn't be a problem." "Which place did the third Master Feng take a fancy to?" Celestine was curious. Zhang Tian also perked up his ears to listen. Yi Hao shook his head. "I've only heard rumors. However, no one knows what the third Master Feng is thinking. No matter what, it's always good to give him a heads up. Now that the Shaoguang Group's development plans and trends have been made public, we can see that they are coming aggressively. Some of them look very risky, but I believe that the third Master Feng is not the kind of person who does things without confidence." Zhang Tian was not very clear about what Yi Hao and the others talked about. He did not understand some of the things that were going on. He only knew that Yi Hao was preparing to start on the area not far from the side door of Chuhua University. He just did not know when he would be able to take it down. He did not know when the real construction would start. After chatting with Yi Hao for a while, Celestine said goodbye and left. After Zhang Tian and Celestine left, Yi Hao sat in the room for a while. Suddenly, he asked Leopard and Ranqi, "Do you think I should open a room especially for that cat to vent?" Ranqi, who had just relaxed a little because of the cat's departure, stiffened. "Open a room especially for that cat?" Looking at the whole country, who would open a VIP room especially for a cat? Just to let that cat vent by singing. Also, if he opened a room especially for that cat, did that mean that the cat would come often in the future? Maybe it would even bring some friends? Leopard and Ranqi did not say anything. After Yi Hao smoked 2 cigarettes in a row, he got up and left. It seemed that he already had an idea. However, Leopard and Ranqi did not know what decision Yi Hao had made. On the other hand, on the way back, Zhang Tian suddenly remembered that Yi Hao and the others did not seem to notice the problem with his beard. Was it because of the color of his fur and the light at that time that they did not notice it? It was not until he returned to the Jiao family that Zhang Tian came up with an explanation. Not everyone could tell at first glance that something was wrong with you. If they did not pay enough attention, if they did not care enough, if they did not pay enough attention to you, how could they notice those details? Some people had pets, and they would be able to tell if their pets were in a slightly bad condition. Whether they were active, whether they were walking normally, whether the tip of their nose was moist, whether there were any changes in their habits, etc. But for some people, even if their pets were on the verge of death, they might not be able to tell. It was the same for pets, and it was the same for people. For example, if the Jiao Pa or the 2 children coughed, the Jiao Ma would be able to tell that there was something wrong with the cough. She was afraid that it might be a cold or pharyngitis, and she would quickly take measures to prevent the situation from developing in a worse direction. However, how many people living in the surrounding area would be able to think like that? In Zhang Tian's case, the Jiao family seemed to be able to notice his abnormality immediately. When he thought of this, Zhang Tian had a very strange feeling. He could not tell exactly what it was. When he was still a human, he had never felt this way. Perhaps he did not notice it at that time. After venting the frustration in her heart and figuring out some problems, Zhang Tian no longer cared so much about the bearded man. Now that his beard had grown a lot, everything was slowly getting better. Since he was in a good mood, Zhang Tian began to feel restless again. The weather outside was good. Sometimes, Zhang Tian would see Huang and the others rolling on the grass and basking in the sun. It was impossible not to be envious. Basking in the sun on the balcony was very different from basking in the sun outside. Today, Zhang Tian finally decided to go out for a walk. The beard that had been growing for 2 weeks was much longer than when it was just cut. Although it still looked shorter than when it was in good condition, it was much more pleasing to the eye. Besides, if he went out, people might not notice his beard. Besides, Zheng Tan did not want to care about what those unimportant people thought of him. After swiping the access card and going out of the building, Zheng Tan breathed in the warm afternoon air and felt the warmth of the sun. He was in a good mood. When he came to the grass in the family's courtyard, he saw Huang lying there and basking in the sun again. The sheriff was playing with bugs in the bushes. Depang was squatting by the side, squinting his eyes and twitching his ears from time to time. This guy would only come out to play when the old lady was out. If the old lady was home, this guy would squat on the balcony and not go anywhere. Seeing Zheng Tan come over, Huang, who was lying on the grass, rolled on the grass and rubbed his back. Then he stretched out his claws and scratched Zheng Tan's tail. He shook his tail to get away from Huang's claws. Zheng Tan lay on the grass and yawned. Then he played with the grass beside his claws. While he was playing, a person came in from the courtyard gate. That person was probably going to take a shortcut and cross the grass to get to the building. However, when he walked on the grass, he saw the cat over there. Zheng Tan felt that the person looked familiar. After thinking for a long time, she remembered that this was the guy who lived on the first floor of the building closer to the building. He was the one who was having sex with his girlfriend early in the morning without drawing the curtains. Later, Zheng Tan went over to take a look a few times. The curtains were tightly drawn and only opened when there was no one in the room. Originally, Zheng Tan thought that the person would pick up a stone and throw it at him, so he was ready to dodge. He didn't expect that the person would just stand there and change his expression a few times. Then, as if he didn't see anything, he continued to walk. However, he deviated from his route and walked a lot faster to avoid Zheng Tan and the others. What Zheng Tan didn't know was that the person did have the idea of picking up a stone and throwing it at the cat, but he resisted. Later, he asked a few people in the courtyard, and they told him that there were 2 cats and 2 dogs in the east courtyard that he couldn't provoke. The 2 dogs referred to the bull-headed terrier Zhuang and Sanxue, the Sahara dog. The former's fighting strength was ferocious, and everyone in the courtyard knew that. It made a name for itself in catching thieves, and it had a fierce reputation. When it went for a walk, it even fought with some of the dogs in the west courtyard. It was a person that didn't care about life when it was fierce. On the other hand, Sahara dog was a little smart, liked to cause trouble, and was vengeful. If you offended it, it would shit in front of your door, push you from behind when you weren't paying attention, or pull your shoelaces, or pee on your bedding that was exposed to the sun. In short, it was very annoying. However, it had a strong background, and you had to look at its owner before you hit it. As for the 2 cats, they were both in the B family building. One was Fat Pear Blossom, and the other was Black Cat. It wasn't as detailed as the introduction of the 2 dogs. It was very simple, but it gave people endless fanciful thoughts. However, it was precisely because of this that people were even more afraid. Although what the 2 cats and 2 dogs said was a joke, there was truth in it. Therefore, every time that person entered the courtyard, he would avoid the 2 cats and 2 dogs when he saw them. When he walked out of the lawn, that person turned his head to look at the cat that was sunbathing on the lawn. He saw that the black cat was still looking at him. That gaze made people panic, and they felt that if they looked at it a few more times, they would have goosebumps. Shaking his head, that person quickened his pace and left. Zheng Tan didn't know what that person was thinking, and he could only wonder why that person looked at him as if he was looking at a scourge. However, it was only a moment of curiosity, and he threw it to the back of his mind. At around 4 o'clock, Jiao Yuan and the others rode their bicycles back. Because the whole school was cleaning today, they didn't have to be on duty, so they just cleaned up casually and came back. After entering the courtyard, they went to their respective buildings. When they parted ways, Zheng Tan heard them talking about the morning run. It was very strange. Why would that little brat Jiao Yuan decide to go for a morning run? When they were eating dinner that night, Jiao Yuan mentioned it. Only then did Zheng Tan know that the autumn sports meet was about to begin. Unlike the sports meet in primary school, the competition between junior high school students was more intense. Children in their puberty period began to have all kinds of ideas. At the beginning of junior high school, many boys hadn't started to grow, and girls generally matured earlier, so many boys still looked small. For example, Jiao Yuan and the others were about the same height as the little girl Litmus. Sometimes, they felt that they couldn't compare to the little girl. However, Xiong was an exception. This guy was strong, and he was considered tall in class. He was also more active. As soon as he entered the class, he got the position of sports committee member. As for the few of them, the teachers took good care of them, not only because of Xiong's mother, but also because some of the children who studied in this junior high school were the children of the teachers of Tsinghua University. Therefore, the teachers in the school would take good care of these students. Among these teachers, there might also be children who were studying in Tsinghua University, and they would also need the teachers of Tsinghua University to take care of them. Everyone was well aware of this. However, because of this, small groups were formed in the class. For example, Jiao Yuan and the others were in a small group. In this small group, there was a sports committee member. In addition, there were many events in the sports meet that hadn't been signed up for long, and the students in the same class weren't very familiar with each other. Xiong pulled Jiao Yuan and the others into the group. As for the rest of the events that hadn't been signed up yet, they could each choose one.